Chapter 3187. Guan Gulong and the other three young men were all in the second heaven of the king god realm and had awakened their origin divine force. In the entire Taishu holy court, although this level of strength could not be said to be at the top, it was definitely above average. However, the four of them were defeated by Autumn Moon. One could imagine how powerful Autumn Moon was. Bam! Chiao Yu followed up and stepped on Guan Gulong's mouth. Guan Gulong screamed in agony. His mouth was crushed and blood spurted out of his mouth. A mouthful of teeth flew out. Guan Gulong's face was completely deformed. Humph, let's see if you dare to scold the young master. Autumn Moon snorted. Then he moved back to Lu Ming's side. Amazing! Lu Ming exclaimed. Lu Ming, do you only know how to hide behind a woman? Without this woman, I can crush you with one finger. But Guan Gulong struggled to get up and shouted. However, his teeth had not grown back yet as they had been knocked out. When he spoke, his mouth was full of air. Oh, is that so? You want to fight with me? Lu Ming's lips curled into a sneer. Just as he was about to step out, he suddenly felt a few cold, murderous intents landing on him. Lu Ming frowned and looked in the direction of the murderous intents. There were a few young men in black robes. Their faces were ghastly pale as they stared at Lu Ming coldly. It's him. He's from the abysmal heavenly king mansion. Lu Ming's heart stirred. Lu Ming recognized one of the young men in black robes. Previously, in Xingyue Ancient City, Lu Ming had met 3 supreme talents from the abysmal heavenly king mansion. 2 of them were killed by Lu Ming. Only one of them survived. The young man in front of him was the one he had met in Xingyue Ancient City. What a coincidence! Lu Ming muttered. If the other party was courting death, he would not mind sending him on his way. All right, we have enough people. We can set off now. At this moment, a group of people walked over and spoke loudly. Their voices echoed throughout the area. This group of people was from the Bone Sword tribe. Is this the Bone Sword tribe? Lu Ming looked over and was surprised. The people of the Bone Sword tribe looked very strange. They looked similar to humans, but they were all as thin as firewood. They looked like skeletons. On their backs, there was a sword hilt. Yes, they were hilts that protruded from the Bone Sword tribe. It was said that the spine of the Bone Sword race would naturally nurture a bone sword. Its power was unmatched and incomparably terrifying. The stronger the cultivation, the stronger the bone sword. This time, the sword bones they collected from the secret realm would be of great help to the cultivation of the Bone Sword race. Otherwise, the Bone Sword race wouldn't have offered such tempting conditions to ask for help. The abysmal heavenly king Yu's killing people heavenly heavens. The Bone Sword tribe's people tribes use. Heaven-esque Guan Gulong snorted. Killing intent flashed in his eyes as he thought of a sinister plan. Heavens you, Lu Ming, don't let me find you. Otherwise, I'll see how you die. Guan Gulong gritted his teeth. Everyone, I believe all of you are aware of the specific situation. This time, you will be entering a mystic realm. There are many desolate beasts living inside. These desolate beasts have a type of sword bone on their spines. Your goal is that sword bone. Those sword bones are divided into 3 colors, black, silver, and gold. The different colors will have different qualities. Black is the worst and gold is the best. The sword bones are based on weight. 1 gene of gold sword bones is equivalent to 10 gene of silver sword bones, which is equivalent to 100 gene of black sword bones. Once you obtain 1000 gene of black sword bones, you can cultivate under the sacred heaven jade annulus for a day. 2000 gene of black sword bones will be 2 days, and so on. The Bone Sword tribe members explained. Everyone nodded. They had already known about this before. I'll say it again. The wild beasts in the secret realm are very dangerous and powerful. If you die in battle after entering, the Bone Sword tribe will not be responsible. If you want to withdraw now, you can do so now. The Bone Sword tribe members continued. Of course, no one withdrew. When they came, they already knew that killing wild beasts to obtain the sword bones would be dangerous. They were already mentally prepared. All right, since no one wants to withdraw, you can sign your names on the life and death forms and enter the secret realm. the Bone Sword tribe members said as they took out a huge life and death forms. Every time someone came, there would be many geniuses. Many of them had great backgrounds. Obviously, the Bone Sword tribe members were afraid that if these geniuses died, the forces behind them would cause trouble for the Bone Sword tribe. If they signed the life and death forms, it meant that they were willing to join. Everyone lined up and signed the life and death forms one by one. Then, they left under the lead of the Bone Sword tribe members. Not long after, they came to a wide platform. In front of the platform, there was a mirror floating in the air. There was a stone bridge that extended from the platform to the mirror. Is the secret realm inside the mirror? Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Sure enough, the Bone Sword tribe member said, the secret realm is inside this mirror. This mirror is an ancient treasure passed down by my Bone Sword tribe. The mirror is a world of its own, but my Bone Sword tribe members can't enter it. You can go in. You have 1 year, and you can come out at any time within a year. After they finished saying those words, some old men and some middle-aged burly men began to walk toward the mirror along the stone bridge. Every once in a while, the Bone Sword tribe would open the mirror world and invite people to hunt for the sword bones inside. For some people, it wasn't their first time here, so they were familiar with the process. The closer they got to the mirror, the smaller their bodies became. When they got close to the mirror, their bodies became the size of a speck of dust and then disappeared into the mirror. The others followed and walked toward the mirror. Let's go too, Lu Ming said as he and Autumn Moon Lanling walked along the stone bridge toward the mirror. Strangely, the closer they got to the mirror, the larger it became. In the end, the mirror seemed to cover the sky. Buzz. As soon as their bodies touched the mirror, it was as if they had passed through a layer of water. The next moment, Lu Ming and the others appeared on a flight of stairs. Behind them was also a mirror. They had entered the mirror world. Looking up, there was a boundless world in front of him. It stretched as far as the eye could see, with no end in sight. In the distance, there was a roar. It's the sword bone beasts. Charge! Many people rose into the air and flew into the distance. Let's go! Those who came here through the mirror rose into the air and flew in all directions to hunt the sword bone beasts. Lu Ming saw Guan Gulong glancing at him coldly before flying into the distance with his companions. Chapter 3188. Lu Ming smiled faintly. Then he, Chiu Moon, and Lan Ling chose a direction and flew forward. Soon, they were tens of thousands of miles away. Boom, boom. While flying, Lu Ming saw many giant beasts fighting with some experts. These giant beasts were hundreds of meters tall and had wild auras. They were the sword bone beasts. These sword bone beasts didn't have high cultivation bases. Along the way, they found that most of the sword bone beasts were in the king god realm. However, these sword bone beasts were being watched by others. There were too many people coming in. There were too many wolves and too little meat. The three of them had no choice but to fly further away. After flying for another tens of thousands of miles. Look, sword bone beasts. Chiu Moon pointed ahead and shouted. In front of them was a mountainous area. A few sword bone beasts were digging into the mountainous area, digging for metal to eat. Quick, let's do it. Lu Ming shouted. They had to hurry up. Otherwise, the sword bone beasts would be taken away again. The three of them turned into 3 streaks of light and flew toward the sword bone beasts. The sword bone beasts noticed Lu Ming's group. They roared and attacked Lu Ming's group. Pieces of bone flew out from the sword bone beasts and slashed toward Lu Ming's group like flying swords. However, these sword bone beasts were only in the king god realm. Not to mention Lu Ming and Chiu Moon, even Lan Ling could easily kill them. Bang, bang, bang. The attacks of the trio landed on the sword bone beast. Gravel flew everywhere on the sword bone beast's body and exploded. 3 sword bone beasts were killed in an instant. Lu Ming's group landed beside the sword bone beasts and started to look for the bones. The sword bone beasts had a strange structure. They weren't made of flesh and blood. They were made of rocks and metal. In the end, the 3 of them found a finger-sized black bone at the spine of the sword bone beast. The bone was in the shape of a sword, and it emitted an invisible sword pressure. They knew that this was the sword bone that the Bone Sword tribe needed. Lu Ming took a step forward and took the sword bone from the ground. About 5 kilograms. Lu Ming weighed it in his hand and felt rather speechless. The sword bone of a sword bone beast was only about 5 kilograms. Wouldn't that mean that he would have to kill 100 of these sword bone beasts in exchange for a day of cultivation under the sacred heaven jade annulus? It seemed like it wouldn't be easy to cultivate under the saintly heaven jade wall. After that, Qiu Autumn Moon and Lan Ling took off their sword bones. They were about the same as Lu Ming's, about 5 kilograms. Let's continue hunting. Immediately, the three of them soared into the sky and continued their hunt. However, there were too many people in the beginning. Lu Ming's group saw many people fighting over the sword bone beasts. There are many sword bone beasts in this world. There's no need to compete here. Let's go deeper first. Lu Ming suggested. The three of them didn't stay any longer. They sped up and flew into the depths of this world. As they went deeper, the crowd began to disperse. Finally, there weren't so many people. There's more ahead. Qiu Autumn Moon cried out in surprise. There were at least 5 or 6 sword bone beasts in front of them. The three of them flew forward and killed them. Then they continued to search. With fewer people, it was much easier to find sword bone beasts. Next, they found sword bone beasts from time to time. This kind of sword bone beast would not only be on the ground but also hide under the ground. Their bodies were like a mixture of rock and metal. For example, when they slept, they would hide underground. Sometimes, when they were defeated, they would hide underground. It was a troublesome thing. They had to sense carefully to find sword bone beasts. In this way, more than a day later, Lu Ming's group had each obtained about 500 gene of black sword bone beasts. It was enough for them to cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for about half a day. The three of them were searching for sword bone beasts in a barren mountain. Suddenly, a loud roar was heard. The gravel on the ground exploded. A sharp claw scratched toward Lan Ling. It was very powerful. Lan Ling was shocked. She quickly waved her sword to block it. Clang! The sharp claw hit Lan Ling's battle sword. Even with Lan Ling's cultivation, she couldn't block it. Her body shook violently and was blown away. Then, a sword bone beast rushed out from the ground. This sword bone beast was different from the ones they had encountered before. It was much smaller. The sword bone beasts they had encountered before were about 100 meters tall. However, this one was only 20 meters tall. Third King God Realm. A light flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. He could sense that this sword bone beast had the cultivation base of the Third King God Realm. No wonder Lan Ling couldn't block it and was blown away. In the King God Realm, the higher the cultivation base, the stronger the warrior would be. It wasn't something that could be done with some simple secret techniques. Lan Ling's innate talent was high. Her divine techniques and secret techniques were powerful. Moreover, she had awakened the god power of the origin. Even so, she could subdue or kill an ordinary second sky of King God Realm warrior. Facing a third sky of King God Realm warrior, she couldn't resist at all. The sword bone beast roared and wanted to attack Lan Ling again. Lu Ming took a step forward and stood in front of the sword bone beast. He threw a punch. A 9-clawed dragon condensed and dashed toward the sword bone beast. It collided with the sword bone beast's sharp claw. After a dull explosion, the sword bone beast was blown away. Kill! Lu Ming bellowed and punched continuously with both fists. A total of 36 9-clawed divine dragons appeared, charging toward the sword bone beast. After a series of explosions, the sword bone beast was covered in wounds. It lay on the ground lifeless. With Lu Ming's current strength, it wasn't difficult to kill an ordinary Third King God Realm warrior. He didn't even need to use the original secret technique. Of course, on the day of the Sacred Institute of the Great Void Imperial family, his opponents wouldn't be ordinary King God Realm warriors. They would all be top geniuses. Who needs your help? I can handle it myself. Lan Ling flew over and said stubbornly. Wipe the blood off your mouth first. Lu Ming smiled. Lan Ling harumphed and didn't say anything. Lu Ming stepped forward and took the sword bone beast's bone. Silver. Lu Ming was delighted. The sword-bone beast was silver and it wasn't light. It weighed around 30 jin. 30 jin of silver sword-bone beast was equal to 300 jin of black sword-bone beast. Lu Ming took it without hesitation. He wouldn't discuss with Lan Ling about sharing it equally. If he wanted to share it equally, he would share it equally with Chiu Moon. After that, they moved more carefully. Since there was a third King God Realm sword-bone beast here, there would be a second one, a third one. As expected, the level of the sword-bone beasts increased a lot in this area. Not only the first King God Realm, but also the second and third King God Realm sword beasts. Their collecting speed had increased a lot. In the blink of an eye, they had been here for a month. On this day, while they were flying to look for sword-bone beasts, they suddenly stopped. Because some young men in front of them were blocking their way. Chapter 3189. There were 3 young men in black robes with gloomy faces. They were the 3 young men from the abysmal Heavenly King Mansion. The young man in black robes in the middle stared at Lu Ming like a venomous snake. He did not hide his murderous intent at all. "What do you want?" Lan Ling asked coldly. She did not know about the grudge between Lu Ming and the abysmal Heavenly King Mansion. "What do we want?" "Of course, we want to kill you." The voice of the black-robed young man in the middle was extremely cold. As soon as he finished his words, he exuded a shocking aura that shrouded Lu Ming, Chiu Yu, and Lan Ling, third King God Realm. Lan Ling exclaimed and her face turned pale. This young man had the cultivation base of the third King God Realm. Moreover, he was a genius who had awakened the God origin. However, this was not beyond Lu Ming's expectations. The young man had seen Chiu Moon defeat Guan Gulong and the others. He was confident that he would be able to kill them. The other 2 young men from the abysmal Heavenly King Mansion were much weaker. The young man they had met in Xingyue Ancient City had broken through to the first King God Realm. The other young man was in the second King God Realm, the same as Guan Gulong. They had awakened the divine origin gene. They were probably the top young men in the abysmal Heavenly King Mansion. "Young master, leave it to me," Chiu Moon said. She took a step forward and a powerful aura burst out from her body. It was extremely sharp and she broke through the young man's aura. Her eyes revealed an eager expression. Lu Ming smiled. This girl was addicted to fighting. It made sense. Ever since Chiu Yu received the inheritance of Lord of Heaven Shenyan, she had been cultivating in seclusion. She didn't have a good battle experience. After she had tortured Guan Gulong, she was very excited to fight. "Go," Lu Ming said with a smile. "You want her to fight alone?" Lan Ling was shocked. "Of course, it's just a few cats and dogs. How can we fight them together?" Lu Ming curled his lips in disdain. The 3 youths from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King's Mansion almost died from anger. "The 3 of you, die together." The Sky Pride of the 9th Abyss Heavenly King residence in the middle roared and waved his hand. A few ghostly claws formed and grabbed at Chiu Autumn Moon, Lu Ming, and Lan Ling. "Your opponent is me." Chiu Yu shouted and waved her hand. 3 saber lights slashed out and split the 3 ghostly claws in half. Then he took a step forward and moved as fast as lightning. With a wave of his hand, saber light flashed and enveloped the 3 youths from the 9th Serenity Heavenly King Mansion. "Kill this bitch!" The strongest Heaven's Pride from the 9 Nether Heavenly King Mansion roared. His figure flickered as he dodged Autumn Moon's saber light and rushed towards Autumn Moon. However, Autumn Moon's expression was calm. Her body was enveloped by divine power, and she looked like a peerless goddess. In the blink of an eye, saber lights shot out from Xiao Chen's fingers, enveloping his opponent from all directions, leaving him no room to retreat. Bam! The Sky Pride from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King Mansion trembled and retreated. As for the other 2 Sky Prides from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King Mansion, they had to use all their strength to avoid Autumn Moon's attack. "You're courting death. Ghostly Fog kill." The leader of the 9 Nether Heavenly King Manor shouted. His body actually exploded with a bang and turned into a cloud of ghostly mist. At the same time, the other 2 Sky Prides from the 9th Abyss Heavenly King Mansion exploded and turned into ghostly fog. The three ghostly fogs expanded rapidly and soon covered a radius of 1,000 miles. Chiao Autumn Moon was also shrouded in the ghostly fog. Let's retreat. Lu Ming pulled Lan Ling and retreated quickly, leaving the area covered by the ghostly fog. Why are you so confident in her? Lan Ling asked. She had seen how Chiao Autumn Moon suppressed Guan Gulong. She was envious and jealous of her strength. However, the young man from the ninth abyss Heavenly King Mansion was at the third heaven of the King God realm. He had awakened the origin divine force and was one level higher than Guan Gulong. He could defeat Guan Gulong in one blow. Chiao Autumn Moon was no match for him. What's there to be worried about? Lu Ming smiled faintly. It was indeed difficult for the top sky prides to fight someone who was at the King God realm. However, Chiao Autumn Moon could do it. Chiyue had cultivated the myriad Tao art of the universe, mastered the god-slaying light, and had even awakened her origin source secret art. With all of these skills combined, even if her opponent was a top-notch prodigy, she wouldn't have any problems defeating him. Boom, boom. The ghostly fog was filled with explosions and beams of divine light shot out from time to time. The battle was intense. Lu Ming and Lan Ling stood in the distance and watched. Suddenly, Lu Ming turned his head and looked behind him. He said calmly, "Why are you hiding there so sneakily? Come out." Lan Ling was shocked and quickly looked back. "Haha, your spiritual senses are quite sharp." A loud laugh was heard and four young men flew over. Lu Ming's lips curled into a creepy smile. The four young men were Guan Gulong and the other three. In fact, before Chiao Yu and the people from the Nine Nether Heavenly King Mansion fought, Guan Gulong and the other three had already arrived nearby. They hid in the dark and watched from afar. When Chiao Yu and the people from the Nine Nether Heavenly King Mansion fought, Guan Gulong got agitated and was discovered by Lu Ming. "Lu Ming, I didn't expect you to offend so many people despite your weak cultivation. You even offended the people from the Ninth Abyss Heavenly King Mansion. Now that the woman is trapped by them, who can help you?" Guan Gulong laughed heartily without restraint. He was only afraid of Chiao Autumn Moon. Now that Chiao Autumn Moon was blocked by the others, it would be easy for him to kill Lu Ming, a half-step divine king. Fush, fush, swoosh. At this time, there was a sound coming from afar. More people had arrived. There were more than a dozen figures, both young and old. However, they did not get close but stood nearby to watch. Obviously, they were attracted by the battle between Chiao Autumn Moon and the people from the Ninth Abyss Heavenly King Mansion. What a pity, Lu Ming sighed slightly at the sight of so many people. Originally, he wanted to kill Guan Gulong and the others here. However, with so many people here, it would be difficult for him to kill Guan Gulong. After all, he had just arrived at the Taishu sacred capital and had no foundation. As for Blue Merchant, he was no longer the Blue Merchant of the past and had lost his influence. As for the Guanggu family, they were a big family in the Taishu sacred capital and were much more powerful than the Jin family and Qin family of the Ninth Abyss Heavenly King Mansion. If he killed Guan Gulong, no one would be able to help him if Guan Gujian went crazy and wanted to kill him. Only when he entered the Taishu sacred capital and entered the top 10, he would be able to establish his own mansion and family. By then, he would have no qualms about killing Guan Gulong. However, he had to be cautious now. "I can only teach him a lesson," Lu Ming mumbled. "Kid, no matter how much you mumble to yourself, it's useless. I will destroy your astral core and let you live like that useless Blue Merchant." Guan Gulong shouted. Chapter 3190. Shut up. Lan Ling was so angry that she was trembling. She shouted and was about to rush forward to fight Guan Gulong. However, a firm and powerful hand pressed down on Lan Ling's shoulder. An indifferent voice rang in her ears, "Let me do it." Subsequently, Lu Ming stepped forward and walked towards Guan Gulong. At this moment, Lu Ming's image in Lan Ling's eyes had unknowingly become taller. What am I thinking? How did this wretched and shameless guy become taller? Lan Ling hurriedly shook her head and tossed the unrealistic thought out of her mind. Looking at Lu Ming's showy face walking towards him, Guan Gulong was furious and shouted, "A half-step divine king trash still dares to act tough here. Kneel down and eat the soil, Guan Gulong slapped Lu Ming, his speed as fast as lightning. Slap. The crisp sound of a slap was heard. Then, a figure retreated continuously. The person who retreated was naturally Guan Gulong. Although he made the first move, Lu Ming managed to land a slap on his face even though he made the first move. This slap was extremely heavy. Guan Gulong spurted out blood from his mouth and his teeth flew out. Guan Gulong roared like a pig being slaughtered. His lungs were about to explode from anger. Previously, his teeth were knocked out by Autumn Moon. During this period of time, they had finally grown back. Now, his teeth were knocked out again. He was so furious that he wanted to curse the heavens and the earth. Boom! Guan Gulong unleashed all the divine power in his body. He stared at Lu Ming with bloodshot eyes and shouted, "Brat, I'm going to chop you into 8 pieces." A slender saber appeared in his hand, and he slashed at Lu Ming with it. He was still full of confidence and believed that he could kill Lu Ming with his blade. Just now, he was too careless. He thought that Lu Ming was just a half-step divine king. Therefore, he did not take any precautions and was slapped by Lu Ming. Even if beaten to death, he did not believe that with his strength he could not even beat a half-step divine king. The saber light pierced through the air, emitting a terrifying whistling sound as it charged towards Lu Ming. Divine Dragon Dharma form. Lu Ming muttered and waved his hands. 9-clawed dragon appeared and pounced at Guan Gulong. The 9-clawed dragon drowned Guan Gulong in an instant. Boom! Boom! Continuous explosions were heard. When all the 9-clawed dragon disappeared, Guan Gulong was lying on the ground like a dead dog, twitching all over. The godly dragon aspect technique allowed one to condense more godly dragon aspects, which increased the power of the technique. Now that he could condense 36 9-clawed dragons all at once, its power was astonishing. It wasn't much weaker than Lu Ming's Gate of Domination. If he could condense more than 100 9-clawed dragons in the future, its power would surpass that of the Gate of Domination. Of course, when Lu Ming awakened the origin source divine power of the sovereign's divine power, the power of the Gate of Domination would increase tremendously. The 3 sky prides who were with Guan Gulong and the people who were watching from afar were stunned. This scene had exceeded everyone's expectations. In their expectations, Lu Ming would be the one who would be beaten to a pulp. However, in the end, it was Guan Gulong who was beaten to a pulp. Lu Ming took a step forward and landed beside Guan Gulong. Let's attack together. Let's kill him together. Guan Gulong screamed in fear. Attack! The other 3 young men shouted and attacked together. 3 attacks were launched towards Lu Ming. Divine Dragon Aspect. Lu Ming roared and his divine power surged. All of his divine power was activated and the battle character art was activated. Another 36 9-clawed dragons appeared in the sky and rushed towards the 3 young men. Each of the divine dragon aspects exploded when they collided with each other. They turned into terrifying energy and rushed towards their opponents. A series of explosions were heard, and the 3 young men were sent flying. Each of them vomited blood and their faces were pale. Their eyes were filled with fear. They were all sky prides in the 2nd heaven of the king god realm. However, the 3 of them were no match for Lu Ming. They were terrified. Gosh, a half-step divine king has such powerful combat strength? The people who were watching the battle from afar were dumbfounded. Where did he come from? He's too terrifying. Sure enough, every time the Taishu Imperial Family Holy Institute is held, there will be some monstrous geniuses who can't be measured by common sense. The gathering of sky prides, the gathering of the winds and clouds. Another great battle is about to happen. Some people exclaimed and looked forward to it. They were looking forward to the battle between the sky prides of the Taishu dynasty after the Taishu Imperial Family Holy Institute was held. How exciting would it be? At this moment, Guan Gulong was scared out of his wits and he was dumbfounded. Kneel down and eat dirt. Lu Ming walked over and grabbed Guan Gulong. His divine force burst out and he caught Guan Gulong. Lu Ming, let me go. Let me go. There are so many people here. If you kill me, my father will not let you go. Guan Gulong screamed in fear. He flailed his arms and legs like a tortoise whose shell had been caught. Bam! Lu Ming ignored him. He grabbed Guan Gulong and shoved his head into the ground. Guan Gulong's head was shoved into the ground and only his body was left struggling outside. He was really eating dirt this time. The other 3 young men were shocked and they retreated frantically. Lu Ming smiled faintly and ignored them. He came to Lan Ling and watched the battle between Autumn Moon and the residents of the 9 Nether Heavenly King. Lan Ling looked at Lu Ming with mixed feelings. Lu Ming's strength was getting more and more unfathomable. She knew that Lu Ming had awakened his secret skill of origin. He had suppressed Guan Gulong and the others without even using his secret skill of origin. She was still no match for Guan Gulong. I can't lose to him. I can't. Lan Ling clenched her fists and gritted her teeth in her heart. Light of destruction. At this moment, a shout came from the area shrouded in the ghostly fog. Then, a beam of divine light shot into the sky. It was dazzling. Autumn Moon had finally used the light of destruction. As soon as the light of destruction was released, the thick ghostly fog was split into 2. 2 consecutive screams were heard. The ghostly fog dissipated and 2 figures fell to the ground. They were dead. They were 2 geniuses from the residence of the 9 Nether Heavenly King. One of them was in the first layer of the King God realm and the other was in the second layer of the King God realm. They had been killed by Autumn Moon's light of destruction. Only the 3rd layer of the King God realm genius was still alive. However, he was sent flying. There was a deep wound on his chest and blood was gushing out. Damn it. Damn it. The residents of the 9 Nether Heavenly Kings screamed in fear. He turned around and ran. Kill! Autumn Moon whispered. An ancient scimitar appeared in her hand. Autumn Moon waved her hand and the scimitar flew out. It was like a dazzling light that streaked across the sky at an unimaginable speed. In a flash, it caught up with the residents of the 9 Nether Heavenly King. Blood splattered everywhere. The residence of the 9 Nether Heavenly King was beheaded. Chapter 3191. Autumn Moon performed her origin source secret skill. Her machete flew out and killed the sky pride of the abysmal heavenly mansion. The scene was silent. Only the sound of the machete cutting through the air could be heard. Swoosh! The machete flew back to Autumn Moon's hand and disappeared. Origin source secret skill. That's the origin source secret skill. Someone exclaimed. It's the origin source secret skill. That's terrifying. I can't believe I saw a sky pride who has awakened the origin source secret skill. A half-step divine king is already terrifying. Now, there's another person who has awakened the origin source secret skill. Who are these people? Amazing! Everyone was amazed. Lan Ling's eyes were wide open. She stared at Autumn Moon with a complicated look in her eyes. She used to think that Autumn Moon was just an ordinary maid by Lu Ming's side. She didn't deserve to be by Lu Ming's side. But now, Autumn Moon's talent was terrifying. Not only was her cultivation higher than hers, but she had also awakened the origin source secret skill. Her combat strength was far above hers. Lan Ling, who had always been proud, suffered a serious blow to her self-esteem. She gritted her teeth and clenched her fists tightly. At that moment, Guan Gulong's head was already out of the ground. Seeing this scene, he was so scared that he almost wet his pants. He didn't have time to say anything and ran away. In the blink of an eye, he was gone. Lu Ming couldn't be bothered to chase after him. Guan Gulong knew what was good for him. It was fine if he didn't cause trouble for him in the future. If he continued to cause trouble for him in the future, he would definitely kill him. Young master, Autumn Moon took the storage rings of the sky prides of the abysmal heavenly mansion and handed them to Lu Ming. Take it. Let's go. Lu Ming smiled and flew forward. It was not a good place to stay. It was better to leave first. Soon, the 3 of them flew tens of thousands of miles away. They continued to look for and kill sword bones. Time passed quickly. Soon, half a year had passed. In this half a year, they had all gained a lot. Lu Ming and Qiu Yu had the greatest gains. The sword bones that they had collected were enough for them to cultivate under the sagely heaven jade wall for 10 days. Lan Ling's cultivation was relatively low, so her harvest was naturally much less. On this day, they were flying in the air looking for sword bone beasts when they suddenly heard a roar, and then a few sword bone beasts rushed out from the ground. These sword bone beasts had the cultivation base of the second sky of King God Realm. However, they didn't attack Lu Ming's group. Instead, they ran wildly in one direction. Their figures flickered as they charged forward. The sword bone beasts at the second sky of King God Realm weren't their opponents. They were killed easily. But before they could retrieve the sword bones from the sword bone beast, another roar came from afar. One by one, the sword bone beasts appeared and ran in the same direction. These sword bone beasts were all running in the same direction. They hurried to retrieve the sword bones from the sword bone beasts and then chased after the sword bone beasts. After a while, they found that the sword bone beasts were everywhere. A large number of sword bone beasts gathered together like an army, running in the same direction. Of course, Lu Ming's group wasn't the only one chasing after the sword bone beasts. Lu Ming scanned the area and saw more than 100 people chasing after them. What's going on? Lu Ming's group was astonished. They didn't join the battle but followed the sword bone beasts from a distance to see what was going on. The others didn't join the battle either. Apparently, they had the same idea. Along the way, the number of sword bone beasts increased. In the end, there were at least several thousand sword bone beasts. The sword bone beasts were gigantic. With several thousand sword bone beasts running together, the scene was terrifying. Boom boom boom. The ground shook unceasingly, rolling up a vast amount of dust and smoke. Just like that, Lu Ming's group had been following them for more than 10 days. Eventually, a giant mountain appeared in front of them. Roar, roar, roar. This giant mountain was full of sword bone beasts. Countless huge sword bone beasts gathered around the giant mountain, roaring toward the sky. Their aura was extremely terrifying. The thousands of sword bone beasts in front of Lu Ming's group also roared, and then all of them drilled into the ground and disappeared. Lu Ming saw a large number of sword bone beasts rushing from all directions of the giant mountain and then drilling into the ground. Behind these sword bone beasts, a large number of people were chasing after them. These people, like Lu Ming's group, came here to hunt sword bone beasts. There were about several thousand of them. So these sword bone beasts are gathered here. It's a bit troublesome to gather so many sword bone beasts. What's so troublesome about it? It's more fun to kill them. There's no need to look for them. Voices came from different directions. Some people with low cultivation had a dignified look in their eyes. Facing so many sword bone beasts, they felt it was tricky. Some people who were confident in themselves were more happy. Boom boom boom. At this moment, the ground around the giant mountain shook violently, and then mountains rose from the ground. The sword bone beasts are controlling the earth. Retreat! Many people shouted and hurriedly retreated. Lu Ming, Qiu Moon, and the others also retreated. Mountains rushed out from the place where they were standing just now. Originally, the majestic giant mountain in front of them was surrounded by a plain. At this moment, mountains rose from the ground like stars surrounding the moon, surrounding the giant mountain in the middle. In an instant, thousands or even tens of thousands of mountains appeared around the giant mountain. Each of them was tens of thousands of feet tall, making the terrain here complicated. From time to time, roars could be heard from the mountains, and the figures of sword bone beasts could be seen. No wonder these sword bone beasts are gathered here. They're gathering to resist us. The sword bone beasts' intelligence is so high. Didn't they say that sword bone beasts have low intelligence? I don't understand. I've come to this secret realm to help the Bone Sword tribe collect sword bones several times, but I've never seen such a situation. An old man was puzzled. Who cares? If they gather together, it'll be easier to hunt. A burly young man was extremely confident. He stepped out and flew into the mountain. As soon as the young man flew into the mountain, he was attacked. The mountain shattered, and a giant sword bone beast rushed out and attacked the burly young man. "You're courting death." The burly young man shouted coldly and threw out a punch. The sword bone beast's body exploded. Only a sword bone flew out and was caught by the young man. So strong. Many people's hearts jumped. The young man's cultivation had reached the third king god realm. More terrifyingly, his divine origin factor had awakened twice. This was an extremely terrifying genius. No wonder he was so confident. Crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Lu Ming exclaimed inwardly. Lu Ming was not confident that he could defeat such an existence. This kind of genius was extremely talented, and the secret techniques they mastered were also extremely terrifying. They might even have secret techniques similar to the ancient god body. Chapter 3192. Lu Ming would not underestimate any of the heroes in the world. The strength of these heroes and monsters could not be judged by their cultivation base. Take Lu Ming for example. Although his cultivation level was only at the half-step Divine King level, he was able to combine the battle formula, the quantum formula, the universe 10,000 Tao Sutra, the green-armored ancient god, and the origin secret skill. With these skills, Lu Ming could explode with amazing combat strength. However, he had it, but that did not mean that others did not have it. The primitive universe was too big. After countless years, there were countless terrifying secret skills. The universe myriad Tao scripture had the miraculous ability to seize the fortune of heaven and earth, but was there no other technique that could be compared with it? Not necessarily. There must be some in the vast primitive universe. As for the origin ancient characters, there were not just one or two of them. From the quantifying character formula, there were quite a number of origin ancient characters. Others could also obtain them. As for secret skills like the ancient god technique, there were countless of them in the primitive universe. There might be monsters stronger than Lu Ming. What kind of monsters will we meet on the day of the Great Void Imperial Family's Sacred Institute? Lu Ming was looking forward to it. Boom! The young man killed several more sword bone beasts and obtained the sword bones. Kill! Let's go! The others could not sit still and rushed into the mountains. People rushed in from all directions. Bang! Bang! As the crowd rushed in, the ground cracked. More sword bone beasts rushed out and pounced on the experts. Among the sword bone beasts, some were weak, some were in the third layer of the king god realm, and some were even in the fourth layer of the king god realm. Many of the weaker cultivators were killed by the sword bone beasts. Fierce fighting broke out in the endless mountains. Lu Ming, Autumn Moon, and Lan Ling also rushed in. When they came to the vicinity of a huge mountain, the mountain rocks exploded. At least a dozen sword bone beasts charged toward them. Some of them were weak and some were strong. They cooperated with each other and pounced on Lu Ming and the others. Lu Ming transformed into the green-armored ancient god realm, which was bigger than the sword bone beasts. At the same time, his combat strength was quadrupled. Boom! The long spear lashed out and killed several sword bone beasts, including a sword bone beast of the third king god realm. At the same time, Autumn Moon also unleashed her light of god slaying. Divine light flashed and split several sword bone beasts in half. Lan Ling didn't intervene. Not only that, he still needed Lu Ming and the others to take care of him. It was another blow to her self-esteem. Just at that moment, a terrifying roar rang out. A sword bone beast charged at Qiu Yu at an astonishing speed. A wild wind whistled, and a terrifying gale swept up. Fourth layer of King God Realm. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. Clang! Autumn Moon turned around and slashed out, clashing with the sword bone beast. The sword bone beast's body trembled as it was sent flying. However, Autumn Moon was also sent flying. The fourth King God Realm was much stronger than the third King God Realm. Moreover, breaking through to the Divine King Realm was getting more and more difficult. It was especially difficult to break through to the fourth King God Realm. Normally, people with divine power could break through to the Divine King Realm if they were lucky enough. For example, many divine kings in the Qin Tian Star area relied on divine power to break through to the Divine King Realm. However, after breaking through to the Divine King Realm, it was extremely difficult to continue breaking through. It was extremely difficult to break through to the next King God Realm. Moreover, once one reached the third king god realm, it was the end of the road. If one wanted to break through to the fourth king god realm, it would be almost impossible unless they had a heaven-defying opportunity. Only by using the king-breaking pellet could one break through to the next level. Those who could break through to the fourth king god realm and above could control divine power. In other words, almost all the experts above the fourth king god realm could control divine power. The strength of such characters was extremely astonishing. For example, the genius from the Nine Serenities Heavenly King Mansion was in the third king god realm. He had awakened the divine power of the origin once. However, if he were to fight against a fourth king god realm expert, he wouldn't be able to defeat him. The higher one's cultivation level was, the harder it was to fight against someone with a higher cultivation level. The sword bone beast dashed toward Chiao Autumn Moon. God's blade. Chiao Autumn Moon muttered. The god's blade appeared in his hand again. The god-destroying light merged with the god's blade as he slashed at the sword bone beast. This slash was as easy as crushing dry weeds. The sword bone beast was cut in half and died on the spot. Chiao Autumn Moon stepped forward and took the sword bone. Golden sword bone. Chiao Autumn Moon exclaimed in surprise. Lu Ming also looked happy. This was the first time they had obtained a golden sword bone. It seemed like only sword bone beasts above the fourth king god realm could have golden sword bones. Let's continue. We'll go deeper. Lu Ming said. Lu Ming, you two go in. I'll hunt outside. Lan Ling said. You're not coming with us? Lu Ming asked. No, you two go in. Lan Ling shook her head. She was following Lu Ming and Chiao Autumn Moon, so she had no chance to interfere. All right, be careful. Lu Ming didn't force Lan Ling. Then he and Chiao Autumn Moon went deeper into the mountain. The deeper they went, the more sword bone beasts they encountered. They attacked them from time to time. After a while, another sword bone beast in the fourth tier of the king god realm dashed toward them. This time, Lu Ming used the god's gate. The god's gate kept suppressing the fourth king god realm sword bone beast. After a few attacks, the sword bone beast finally fell apart. It was killed by Lu Ming. Fourth king god realm sword bone beast is really powerful. With my current strength, it's not difficult to kill it. However, I'm afraid I'm not a match for a fifth king god realm sword bone beast. Lu Ming sighed. It was an ordinary fifth king god realm sword bone beast. If it was a fifth king god realm sword bone beast that had awakened the divine origin gene, it would be a different story. Lu Ming still wasn't satisfied. If others knew what Lu Ming was thinking, they would be furious. It was the king god realm. It was difficult to fight against a higher level. Lu Ming was only a half-step king god realm sword bone beast, but he still wasn't satisfied. Lu Ming stepped forward and took the sword bone beast. A golden sword bone beast weighed 30 jin. A black sword bone beast weighed 3,000 jin. It was enough to cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for 3 days. The two of them continued to fight. A chaotic battle broke out in this area. Although many sword bone beasts were killed, many outsiders were killed as well. Those with insufficient cultivation base didn't dare to go deeper. They could only hunt in the outer area, which was relatively safer. However, this time, many geniuses had come. Some of the geniuses were terrifying. They killed their way in. Lu Ming even found a few who were as strong as him and Autumn Moon. There are so many geniuses. Lu Ming exclaimed. There were still a few decades before the opening of the Great Void Imperial Family Academy. Obviously, many geniuses hadn't come yet. This was only a group of geniuses gathered by the Bone Sword tribe. There were so many terrifying geniuses among them. Lu Ming immediately felt the pressure. It wasn't easy to enter the top 10. Chapter 3193. It wasn't difficult for some powerful geniuses to kill cultivators in the fourth king god realm. Therefore, although the terrain was complicated and there were many sword bone beasts hiding underground, the geniuses couldn't stop them. These geniuses were killing the sword bone beasts at an astonishing speed. Half an hour later, Lu Ming and Chiao Moon had climbed over hundreds of mountains and killed hundreds of sword bone beasts. They had gained a lot. At this moment, A terrifying roar rang out from the peak of the mountain. A violent aura spread out in all directions. Lu Ming and the others saw a sword-bone beast appear on the mountain in the middle. This sword-bone beast was only 2 meters tall. Its whole body was golden, like a battle sword. Bang! The sword-bone beast stomped on the ground, shattering the rocks. The sword-bone beast dashed out like a bolt of lightning. Its target was the tall and sturdy young man who had entered the mountain first. The golden divine light streaked across the sky and approached the young man in a flash. It was like a divine sword piercing the young man's forehead. Boom! The young man roared. Divine light filled the air as he threw out a punch. The fist and the golden sword light collided, and a violent boom erupted. The tall and sturdy young man was sent flying like a cannonball. He crashed into a mountain that was tens of thousands of meters high. The golden light disappeared and the sword-bone beast reappeared. Its eyes were cold. It roared and continued to attack the tall and sturdy young man. The tall and sturdy young man rushed out of the rubble. His face was pale and there was blood on the corner of his mouth. His body glowed and a suit of armor appeared. The armor covered the young man's body. There was a pair of wings on the armor like a big bird. The young man didn't fight the sword-bone beast. He turned around and ran away. The wings on the armor flapped and he quickly retreated to the outside of the mountain. The golden sword-bone beast saw that it couldn't catch up with him. It stopped and looked at the others coldly. Chiu Moon, retreat. Lu Ming pulled Chiu Moon and retreated quickly. The sword-bone beast was too powerful. The tall and sturdy young man was no weaker than any of them. He might even be stronger. However, he was still injured by the sword-bone beast in one move and had to retreat. Even if the two of them joined forces, they were no match for the sword-bone beast. Not only Lu Ming and the others, but some other terrifying prodigies also retreated. The golden sword-bone beast roared. Then, the mountain rocks exploded and a large number of sword-bone beasts crawled out from the ground. They formed an army of sword-bone beasts and charged in all directions. Rumble! A large number of sword-bone beasts gathered together and attacked together. The power was extremely terrifying. Immediately, many people were killed. Lu Ming and the others quickly retreated and soon arrived at the periphery. They saw Lan Ling being surrounded by 2 sword-bone beasts. Lu Ming instantly killed the 2 sword-bone beasts. Go! Lu Ming shouted and rushed out of the mountain with Lan Ling. At this moment, the others also rushed out of the mountain. When they rushed out of the mountain, the sword-bone beasts stopped and didn't pursue them. Roar, roar, the golden sword-bone beast roared. The other sword-bone beasts adjusted their formation and prepared to defend. Everyone finally realized that the sword-bone beasts were under the command of the golden sword-bone beast. Everyone stopped in the air and watched from afar. What's that golden sword-bone beast? Its fighting strength is so terrifying. It's comparable to the 5th King God realm or even higher. Someone said with a solemn face. It should be the 5th King God realm. However, it's comparable to a 5th King God realm cultivator who has awakened the original divine power factor once. The tall and sturdy young man said. He had fought with the golden sword-bone beast before, so he knew how strong it was. What? That's terrifying. Many people sucked in a cold breath. This time, the strongest one was in the 3rd King God realm. How could a 3rd King God realm cultivator fight against a 5th King God realm cultivator who had awakened the original divine power factor once? Lu Ming frowned. With his current strength, he wasn't a match for an ordinary 5th King God realm cultivator, let alone a 5th King God realm cultivator who had awakened the original divine power factor once. No wonder the tall and sturdy young man wasn't a match for the golden sword-bone beast. I've never seen a sword-bone beast like that before. Could it be a mutated one? An old man said. What should we do now? What can we do? Let's go back. We can't kill any more sword-bone beasts. The crowd was in a heated discussion. However, some of the stronger geniuses didn't want to give up. These geniuses were going to join the Great Void Imperial Family's Sacred Institute. They wanted to improve their strength before the Sacred Institute opened. Cultivating under the Saintly Heaven Jade Wall would undoubtedly increase one's combat strength faster. Every additional day of cultivation was a form of improvement. Why don't we team up? The tall and sturdy young man said, looking at Lu Ming, Autumn Moon, and the other strong geniuses. He looked at the geniuses who were at the same level as him. At least in terms of fighting strength, they were at the same level. All right, I agree to team up. As long as we team up and kill this golden sword bone beast, we can hunt the other sword bone beasts. A few geniuses said, their eyes shining brightly. What about the rest of you? The tall and sturdy young man looked at Lu Ming and Autumn Moon. To be honest, Lu Ming and Autumn Moon's strength shocked them. They had awakened their origin source secret techniques. Lu Ming was only a half-step divine king, but he was already so terrifying. They regarded him as a great enemy. Geniuses at this level all wanted to enter the top 10. To put it bluntly, the other geniuses were their competitors. But now, cooperation was the only way to win. All right, let's team up. Lu Ming nodded. This was a rare opportunity, and he didn't want to retreat. Then let's kill them. Ha! The tall and sturdy young man was very forthright. He laughed loudly, and the aura on his body was as heavy as a mountain. He was like a violent dragon. Although he was injured earlier, his recovery speed was amazing and he was fine now. Swoosh, swoosh. Lu Ming and the others stepped forward toward the mountain in front of them. Together with Lu Ming and Autumn Moon, there were 7 geniuses in total. Each of them could kill a 4th-layer Divine King Realm expert. The 7 of them gathered together, and like a divine sword, they rushed toward the mountain. The others didn't follow. They just watched from afar. What? The golden sword bone beast's roar shook the sky, as if it was giving an order. Then, the other sword bone beasts went berserk. They rushed toward Lu Ming and the others in unison. The two sides collided. Dominator's Gate. Lu Ming used the Dominator's Gate. The huge Dominator's Gate emitted an ancient aura, and it pressed forward. Bang, bang. When the Dominator's Gate pressed down, a dozen sword bone beasts were crushed and died on the spot. Lu Ming waved his hand and put away the sword bone beasts of different colors. Chapter 3194. On the other side, Chiao Autumn Moon used her ruler's blade. The ancient scimitar combined with the god-destroying light made its power even more terrifying. Dozens of sword bone beasts were cut in half every time it flew by. The other 5 geniuses were also using their own techniques. The 5 geniuses were astonishingly strong. Although they hadn't awakened their original secret techniques, their cultivation bases were profound. Moreover, their original divine force factor had been awakened for the second time. Their fighting strength wasn't any weaker than Lu Ming's. In fact, they were even stronger than Lu Ming. With the 7 of them working together, they easily killed a large number of sword bone beasts. Even sword bone beasts of the 4th King God realm were killed in an instant. They kept rushing toward the golden sword bone beasts. Bang, bang. However, at this moment, the ground cracked open. Several golden lights flashed and 3 golden sword bone beasts charged toward Lu Ming's group. The wind whistled and the 3 golden sword lights cut through the void. Lu Ming's group of 7 was shocked. They focused on defending themselves. Lu Ming controlled the ruler's gate to suppress one of the golden lights. At the same time, Chiao Autumn Moon waved her hand. Her scimitar flew out and cooperated with Lu Ming to slash at the golden light. The other 5 geniuses worked together to block the other 2 golden lights. Boom, boom. The ruler's gate hit the golden light and exploded with earth-shattering explosions. Sword chi spread out in all directions. The ruler's gate trembled and was sent flying back. At the same time, Chiao Autumn Moon's scimitar was also sent flying back. However, the golden light was finally blocked, revealing its true form. It was a golden sword bone beast. However, it was different from the previous one. This one was 10 meters tall and its aura was intimidating. 5th King God Realm. Lu Ming's face turned solemn. This golden sword bone beast was also in the 5th King God Realm. However, it hadn't awakened its original divine force factor. At the same time, the other 2 golden sword lights were blocked, revealing their true forms. They were also 10 meters tall golden sword bone beasts. 3 5th King God Realm sword bone beasts stood in front of the 7 geniuses. The 7 of them all had grave expressions on their faces. 3 sword-bone beasts at the 5th king god realm weren't easy to deal with. However, they were not afraid. If they were alone, none of them could defeat a sword-bone beast. However, if the 7 of them joined hands, they might be able to defeat 3 sword-bone beasts of the 5th king god layer. The 3 golden sword-bone beasts roared and their bodies emitted golden light. They turned into 3 golden battle swords and slashed towards the 7 people. Kill! Lu Ming's group of 7 also launched their own attacks at the 3 sword bones. Both sides were engaged in a chaotic battle. Lu Ming did not use the Tyrant God Spear. It was not the time for the Great Void Imperial family's holy courtyard to be held yet, so he still had to save some trump cards. The whirlpool of God power in his body spun crazily. Endless God power poured into the God's Gate. The God's Gate emitted an ancient aura. There was a strong suction force acting on the sword-bone beasts, affecting their movements. Then, the God's Gate suppressed them with great force. However, the 5th king god realm sword-bone beast was indeed powerful. Its body turned into a battle sword. Every time it slashed at the God's Gate shook violently. Lu Ming felt the rebound force and was forced to retreat. If it weren't for Autumn Moon's help, he would have been defeated. Lu Ming and Autumn Moon joined hands to block the sword-bone beast for the time being. The other 5 geniuses joined hands to fight against the 2 sword-bone beasts. They had a slight advantage, but it was not easy to win. At the same time, the other sword-bone beasts gathered around them. Sword lights flew out from their bodies and slashed towards Lu Ming's group of 7. They were in a hurry and were at a disadvantage. At the same time, the 2-meter-tall golden sword-bone beast at the top of the mountain roared. It took a step forward and charged towards Lu Ming's group. Oh no! Lu Ming's group was shocked. They were already at a disadvantage. If the king of sword-bone beasts joined the battle, they would be in danger. Back off! The burly young man shouted. He wanted to retreat. Clang! At the same time, a sword light flew towards them from outside the mountain. The sword light was white and dazzling. It was like a flying immortal. Wherever the sword light passed, the sword-bone beasts were killed. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 sword-bone beasts were killed. How terrifying! Everyone's heart trembled. The power of this sword light was simply astonishingly powerful. After killing more than 100 sword-bone beasts, the sword light changed its direction and charged towards the 2-meter-tall king of sword-bone beasts. The king of sword-bone beasts roared. Its golden light shone brightly and turned into a golden sword light that soared into the sky. The 2 sword lights met in the air and collided, creating a brilliant light. It was as if a sun had appeared in the sky. Then, rings of shockwaves spread out in all directions. Mountains were blasted apart by the shockwaves and turned into rubble. Buzz! The sword light vibrated. The king of sword-bone beasts suddenly retreated and turned back into its original form. It retreated tens of thousands of meters and crashed into a mountain. It was repelled. The king of sword-bone beasts was repelled. It was no match for the enemy. Everyone was shocked. What kind of existence was so terrifying? At the same time, the sword light in the sky finally dimmed, revealing a figure. It was a young man with silver hair. He was wearing a white robe and holding a 3-foot-long sword. His sword chi was soaring into the sky. The sword light just now was transformed by this young man. Kill! The young man said coldly. The sword light burst out, and he became one with the sword. Once again, he turned into a sword light and attacked the king of sword-bone beasts. The king of sword-bone beasts roared and pounced on the young man. Clang! Clang! The 2 sides continued to collide. However, the king of sword-bone beasts was at a disadvantage and kept retreating. After more than 10 moves, the king of sword beasts roared unwillingly. The golden sword light collapsed and the king of sword-bone beasts was revealed. The king of sword-bone beasts looked unwilling. Then, with a cracking sound, its body split into 2 halves. It was dead. It was dead. The king of sword-bone beasts had been killed. It had only been a dozen moves and the king of sword-bone beasts had been killed. Everyone gasped and looked at the silver-haired young man in astonishment. His battle prowess was too terrifying. The fifth-layer godly king realm Swordbone Beast King, who had awakened the godly origin gene once, was killed in just a dozen moves. How strong! Lu Ming had a grave expression in his eyes. The highest cultivation level of the people who had come here was below the third king god layer. In other words, the silver-haired young man was at the third king god layer, but he could easily kill the king of sword-bone beasts. His fighting strength was terrifying. Even if Autumn Moon had reached the third king god layer, she might not have such fighting strength. The silver-haired young man gave Lu Ming a dangerous feeling. This was something that Lu Ming had never experienced before. Chapter 3195. Origin Ancient Character. It's the origin ancient character. At this moment, in Lu Ming's sea of consciousness, the quantifying formula shouted in shock. What? Origin ancient character? Where is the origin ancient character? Lu Ming was also shocked. There's an origin ancient character on that silver-haired kid. The quantifying formula shouted. What? He actually has an origin ancient character on him? Lu Ming was shocked. According to the quantifying formula, the origin ancient character was extremely rare, and there were only a few dozen in the entire primitive universe. It was already a heaven-defying opportunity for him to get 2 origin ancient characters. Apart from him, he had never seen a second person with an origin ancient character. Now he saw it. The other party could actually get the origin ancient character. Needless to say, he was also a heaven-defying person. Which one of the origin ancient characters on him? Lu Ming asked. I don't know, I can only roughly sense the origin ancient character on him. The quantifying formula said. Since you can sense the origin ancient character on him, does that mean he can also sense the origin ancient character on me? Thinking of this, Lu Ming was shocked. The origin ancient character must not be leaked, otherwise he would be in big trouble. No, I can sense it because I'm the quantifying formula, which is extremely sensitive to all energy. Just now, when the silver-haired kid was fighting with the Swordbone Beast King, he activated the origin ancient character, so I sensed a little. If he didn't activate it, I wouldn't be able to sense it either. As for the other origin ancient characters, they don't have this function. You can ask the battle ancient character if he can sense it. The quantifying formula said proudly. The battle ancient character was speechless. I see. Lu Ming heaved a sigh of relief and felt more at ease. At the same time, there was a trace of fire in his heart. The other party had the origin ancient character on him. If he could get it, wouldn't his strength be stronger? But thinking about it was just thinking about it. The other party's current strength was far above his, and now it was just a thought. Roar! The Swordbone Beast King was killed, and all the swordbone beasts at the scene roared and then rushed in all directions in a disorderly manner. As soon as the Swordbone Beast King died, all the swordbone beasts panicked and fled frantically. Including the 3 golden swordbone beasts that were fighting Lu Ming and the others, they plunged into the ground and disappeared. Clang. The silver-haired young turned into a sword light and began to hunt those swordbone beasts that fled in all directions. Kill. Next, Lu Ming and the rest also took action to hunt the sword-bone beasts. Now was a good time. The number of sword-bone beasts was very dense. It would be very fast to kill them. Kill. The others who were watching the battle from afar also rushed towards the sword-bone beasts. In the beginning, they hunted very quickly. Slowly, many sword-bone beasts scattered. Some burrowed into the ground, and their hunting speed slowed down. Lu Ming, Mid-Autumn Moon, and Lan Ling regrouped and hunted in one direction. In the end, it became the same as before. They slowly searched and hunted. Time flew, and in the blink of an eye, they had been in this secret realm for a year. A year was up, and it was time for them to go out. The Bone Sword tribe only gave them a year. The reason why they only gave them a year and not longer was because they were afraid that too many swordbone beasts would be killed. Every once in a while, they would kill a portion of the swordbone beasts to give them enough time to reproduce and grow stronger. This way, they would have an endless supply of swordbones to use in the long run. Lu Ming and the others flew toward the exit and left the secret realm. Alright, almost all of you are out. Come with us to count the sword bones and exchange them for time to cultivate in the sacred heaven jade wall. An expert from the Bone Sword tribe said. Everyone followed the expert from the Bone Sword tribe to a spacious area. Then, they lined up and went forward to count their sword bones. You have a total of 3,000 gene of black sword bones. You can cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for 3 days. Take this jade talisman. It contains your cultivation time. An elder from the Bone Sword tribe handed a jade talisman to a young man after counting. Then, he continued to count the sword bones of the next person. You have a total of 1,500 gene of black sword bones. You can cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for 1.5 days. You have a total of 1,000 gene of black sword bones. You can cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for 1 day. One by one, they began to count their sword bones. Most people did not have many sword bones. Not many could cultivate for a few days. Some could only cultivate for a few hours. As for those who could cultivate for more than 10 days, that was extremely rare. Soon, everyone's gaze fell on a silver-haired young man. This was the terrifying genius who had killed the king of swordbone beasts. When he took out all the sword bones, the expert from the Bone Sword tribe who was in charge of counting the sword bones was shocked. There were piles of sword bones, black, silver, and golden. They were extremely dazzling. Count them. The silver-haired young man said lightly. But the expert counted them and soon gave the specific data. A total of 100,000 gene of black sword bones. You can cultivate under the sacred heaven jade wall for 100 days. The elder from the Bone Sword tribe said. 100 days. Many people gasped and then looked at the silver-haired young man with envy. 100 days. Those who could only cultivate for a few hours were so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. Comparisons were odious. This person's combat strength is terrifying. I wonder where he came from? He's definitely not a genius from around the holy capital. He should be a genius from one of the heavenly king's mansions. But with such terrifying combat strength, I think he can challenge the top 10 of the holy capital. Indeed. I wonder how many terrifying people will appear in the 27 heavenly king's mansions this time. Some people whispered. The silver-haired young man took the jade talisman and closed his eyes to rest. 100 days. Lu Ming was also speechless. Soon, it was Lu Ming and the others' turn. Lu Ming and Autumn Moon also gained a lot. Autumn Moon obtained 36 days of cultivation time. As for Lu Ming, he obtained 35 days. Of course, compared to the silver-haired young man, it was not as dazzling. As for Lan Ling, it was much less. She followed Lu Ming and the others and obtained a lot of sword bones. In the end, she obtained 12 days of cultivation time. It didn't take long for everyone to finish counting and obtain a jade talisman. Then, the Bone Sword tribe people led them to the sacred heaven jade wall. The sacred heaven jade wall was surrounded by layers of large formations. If not for the Bone Sword tribe experts leading the way, outsiders would not be able to enter. After passing through the layers of large formations, a huge jade wall appeared in front of them. This jade wall was incomparably huge. It was 100 feet tall and tens of thousands of meters long. All kinds of patterns appeared on it, and it looked incomparably ancient. Legend had it that the patterns on the sacred heaven jade wall were not carved by humans, but naturally. Chapter 3196. Alright, all of you can cultivate here. Activating the sagely heaven jade wall requires a vast amount of energy. Therefore, each of you should cultivate for as long as you need. When the time is up, your jade talismans will notify you. If anyone wants to take advantage of the situation and waste more time, don't blame the Bone Sword tribe for being impolite. An elite from the Bone Sword tribe said. Everyone nodded, then found a place to sit cross-legged under the sagely heaven jade wall and began to cultivate. Lu Ming, Chiu Moon, and Lan Ling also sat cross-legged under the sagely heaven jade wall. When they entered the state of cultivation, a mysterious energy enveloped them from the sagely heaven jade wall. At this moment, they entered a state of emptiness. In this state, their minds were extremely clear, and they were able to think and comprehend things much faster than usual. It's amazing, Lu Ming thought, then closed his eyes and began to comprehend the divine power of Moon. Immediately, Lu Ming made a discovery. He realized that comprehending the divine power of Moon here was at least 100 times faster than usual. Yes, it was 100-fold. Lu Ming was shocked by this effect. It was no wonder that so many people wanted to cultivate under the Sagely Heaven Jade Wall. What Lu Ming didn't know was that the Sagely Heaven Jade Wall was also related to one's talent. The higher one's talent and the higher one's comprehension, the greater one's harvest and the better the effect of cultivating under the Sagely Heaven Jade Wall. The worse one's talent, the worse the effect. Lu Ming could achieve this effect because of his amazing talent. He thought that everyone would have this effect. The Sagely Heaven Jade Wall was too heaven-defying. Under this effect, Lu Ming's comprehension of the divine power of Moon increased rapidly. Moreover, as Lu Ming continued to deepen his comprehension, the speed of his comprehension actually increased. Time flew by quickly. Many people's cultivation time was up, and their bodies emitted a glow. This was to remind them that their time was up. These people were reluctant to leave, and they really wanted to continue cultivating. However, after seeing the light in the eyes of the Bone Sword Tribe's elites, they gave up on this idea and left reluctantly. Slowly, there were fewer and fewer people under the Sagely Heaven Jade Wall. 6 days later, Lu Ming's heart stirred, and he suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were shining brightly. He had broken through. The divine power of Moon had broken through, and he had awakened the origin divine power factor. The Sun-Moon divine power had already been awakened to 99%. It was only one step away from awakening. Now, with the help of the Sagely Heaven Jade Wall, Lu Ming's comprehension speed had increased to an astonishing level. He was able to comprehend the crux of the matter and break through the bottleneck. However, Lu Ming tried his best to restrain himself and did not let the aura of the awakened origin divine power factor leak out. After all, there were still quite a few people around. If they knew that he controlled many kinds of divine powers, it would be bad. Very soon, Lu Ming stabilized himself and comprehended another type of divine power, the Sun divine power. Of his divine power, of his power of time. It was worth it. This trip was really worth it. The speed of improvement was too fast. Every time he awakened a new type of divine power, his combat prowess would increase by a level. Lu Ming cultivated in peace. The others had also gained a lot. The Sagely Heaven Jade Wall was mainly used to comprehend divine power, such as the Origin Divine Power Factor or the Origin Secret Technique. Lan Ling was also immersed in her cultivation. She could cultivate here for a total of 12 days. On the 10th day, her body emitted a special aura. Then she seemed to see a beam of light, a beam of sword light. Origin's Secret Technique. Lan Ling was overjoyed. She understood that she had touched upon the Origin's Secret Technique. Lan Ling's talent was extraordinary. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to awaken the Origin Divine Power Factor. With the guidance of Blue Merchant, her foundation was incomparably solid. Now, under the stimulation of the Sagely Heaven Jade Wall, she finally had a shocking breakthrough. This fluctuation, it's the Origin's Secret Technique. Nearby, the experts of the Bone Sword Tribe also noticed the change in Lan Ling, and they were all surprised. The Great Void Imperial Family's Sacred Academy is convening. More and more geniuses are gathering in the holy capital. That's right. She can awaken the Origin Secret Technique at the first level of the Divine King realm. She's a peerless talent. Several experts of the Bone Sword Tribe nodded. As time passed, Lan Ling's understanding of the Origin's Secret Technique became clearer. On the 12th day, she could finally control the Origin's Secret Technique. At this time, her cultivation time was up. A ray of light shone from her body, and Lan Ling woke up. Origin's Secret Technique. I've finally awakened the Origin's Secret Technique. I'll go back and get some guidance from Father. It'll be completely stable soon. Lan Ling stood up. She couldn't help but look happy. During this period, she saw that Lu Ming and Autumn Moon had both awakened the Origin's Secret Technique. As competitive as she was, she felt uncomfortable. Now that she had finally awakened the origin secret technique, she was naturally happy. After glancing at Lu Ming and Autumn Moon, who were cultivating, Lan Ling didn't stay. She left immediately. After leaving, she went straight to her residence. Ling, you're back. Why are you alone? Where's Lu Ming and the others? Blue Merchant asked in surprise when he saw that only Lan Ling had returned. They're still cultivating under the sacred heaven jade wall. It's time for me to cultivate. Father, let me show you the results of my cultivation. Lan Ling said eagerly. Then, she circulated her divine power and a ray of divine light appeared. This ray of divine light was like a sword light. Lan Ling's mind moved. This ray of divine light turned into a shocking sword light and slashed out. Origin's secret technique. Blue Merchant could tell at a glance that this was the Origin's secret technique. He was overjoyed. Father, Ling, has finally awakened the Origin's secret technique. However, my mastery is still low. I still need your guidance. Lan Ling said with a smile. Ah, of course. I'll teach you some of the tricks of cultivating the Origin's secret technique. Blue Merchant smiled. He had already taught these tricks to Lu Ming. The father and daughter began to cultivate here. As time passed, Lan Ling's mastery of the Origin's secret technique also became more and more proficient. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 days had passed. On this day, Lan Ling was cultivating in the courtyard. The door of their courtyard was opened and a group of people walked in. Third uncle, why didn't you tell me when you returned to the holy capital? I could have held a welcoming dinner for you. A young man chuckled. Blue Maple, why are you here? Blue Merchant's face darkened. This young man was Blue Maple. Third uncle, I'm here to see you. Why do you look so unhappy? You're making me sad. Blue Maple deliberately put on a sad expression. However, in the next moment, he smiled and said, Third uncle, come, let me introduce you. Blue Maple pointed to a young man in luxurious clothes beside him and said, This is the son of the imperial tutor, Wu Fan. Chapter 3197. Wu Fan. Blue Merchant's heart sank. He had a bad premonition. Indeed, Blue Maple continued, the Lan family has already agreed to the imperial tutor's proposal. They want to marry cousin Lan Ling to brother Wu Fan. Today, we are here to take cousin Lan Ling away. These words made Lan Ling tremble. Wu Fan, your son-in-law, greets father-in-law. Wu Fan stepped forward and clasped his fist at Blue Merchant. Blue Merchant waved his hand and a wave of soul power stopped Wu Fan from bowing. I did not agree to marry my daughter to you. I am not worthy of being called young Master Wu. Ha, father-in-law, you must be joking. Miss Lan Ling and I will be getting married soon. What's the harm in calling her a few days earlier? Wu Fan smiled. I have said that I did not agree to marry my daughter to you. Blue Merchant's face darkened. Third uncle, the higher-ups of the Lan family have already agreed to this marriage. You have to agree even if you don't want to. Blue Maple said coldly. Ha, what a joke. I was expelled from the Lan family long ago. I am no longer a member of the Lan family. What right does the Lan family have to decide my daughter's marriage? You can leave now. Forgive me for not sending you off. Blue Merchant waved his hand and ordered them to leave. Blue Merchant, you are the one who was expelled, not Lan Ling. Today, even if you don't agree, we will take Lan Ling away. Blue Maple's voice was cold. He had completely shed all pretense of cordiality. Ling heir will not come to the holy capital, Blue Merchant said. Ah, Blue Merchant, do you think we are stupid? Blue Maple burst into laughter. His gaze landed on Lan Ling as he said, Don't think that we can't tell just because you've changed your appearance. We've been monitoring your every move ever since you stepped into the holy capital. She is Lan Ling. Blue Maple pointed at Lan Ling. I am Lan Ling. So what? I will never marry Wu Fan. Get out of here. Lan Ling was unable to restrain her anger. She finally couldn't help but shout. How dare you speak to young Master Wu Fan like that? Blue Maple shouted. Scram. Blue Merchant shouted as well. His face was extremely cold. Blue Merchant, don't be so shameless. Young Master Wu Fan is the son of the Imperial Advisor. His talent is unparalleled, and he is one of the 10 heroes of the Holy Capital. When the Holy Courtyard of the Great Void Imperial family opens this time, he will definitely be able to enter the top 10 and obtain the right to establish his own family. For him to take a fancy to Lan Ling is her great fortune. Do you understand? Blue Maple shouted. I don't need such good fortune. Lan Ling shouted. Hee hee, what a stubborn character. Wu Fan maintained a smile on his face. At this moment, he said, however, I like this kind of character. I will tell you clearly that the woman that I, Wu Fan, have taken a fancy to must be mine. Today, you have to leave even if you don't want to. Men, take her away. Wu Fan waved his hand. Behind him, a middle-aged man stepped out and walked towards Lan Ling. Blue Merchant took a step forward and came in front of Lan Ling. He shielded Lan Ling behind him. His glabella shone and a strong soul power surged out. It turned into a palm and blasted towards the man. The middle-aged man's body shook violently and he retreated. With me here today, no one can take Ling Er away. Blue Merchant said. Hee hee, do you still think you are the Blue Merchant of the past? Your star core has been destroyed. What's the use of having a little soul power? Heck, take them down. The smile on Wu Fan's face disappeared. It was replaced by a cold, murderous intent. Boom. Behind him, another 2 burly men stepped out. Together with the previous one, there were 3 of them. They rushed towards Blue Merchant. The 3 burly men exuded a violent aura. The 3 burly men were all at the 7th Heaven Divine King realm. Get lost. Don't force me to kill you. Blue Merchant shouted. Arrogant. Kill anyone who tries to stop you. Wu Fan ordered. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 burly men exuded a terrifying aura. Their bodies were like mountains as they pounced towards Blue Merchant. Their violent aura surged towards Blue Merchant like stormy waves. Blue Merchant's glabella shone and a vast soul power appeared. It turned into a sword light and slashed out. The 3 burly men's attacks collapsed instantly. They retreated 100 meters away. There was a sword wound on each of their chests. Blood flowed out from it. How can your soul power be so strong? One of the burly men shouted in shock. Blue Merchant's star core had been destroyed, but he still had such strong combat strength. Both Blue Maple and Wu Fan were astonished as well. Blue Merchant, how dare you hurt my men? You're courting death. Wu Shui, take him down. If he resists, kill him. Wu Fan shouted coldly. Behind him, a man in a crimson robe rushed out. He waved his hand and waves of blood rolled out. It turned into a crimson saber and slashed towards Blue Merchant. This man was at the 9th Heaven Divine King realm. He was at the peak of the Divine King realm. His combat strength was terrifying. Kill! Blue Merchant shouted. He was enraged. His soul power turned into a sword and slashed out again. Boom! The sword light and the crimson saber collided. There was an earth-shattering explosion and the entire area shook violently. When the 2 of them collided, a pillar of light shot up into the sky and pierced through the clouds. Someone is fighting. What terrifying fluctuations! It's a fight between peak divine kings. Instantly, the people in the area were alarmed. They flew over and hovered in the air, watching from afar. That seems to be the son of the Imperial Preceptor, Wu Fan. That's right. There's also Blue Maple from the Lan family. Who are they dealing with? Blue Merchant. It's Blue Merchant. Someone shouted as he recognized Blue Merchant. What? The one from back then? Was he the one who attacked just now? Wasn't his star core destroyed? How can he still have such combat strength? The people in the area started to discuss among themselves. When they recognized Blue Merchant, they were even more shocked. The crimson-robed man trembled and took a step back. However, after the crimson-robed man retreated, he let out a roar and charged towards Lan Shang. His divine power surged like a tidal wave, and a star core could be vaguely seen burning in his dantian like the sun. The vast divine force turned into terrifying saber light and slashed towards Blue Merchant. The crimson-robed man's strength was definitely not weaker than the Jin family master and Qin family master of the 9 extinction Heavenly King mansion. The moment the crimson-robed man attacked, the 3 burly men moved as well. However, the 3 burly men did not charge towards Blue Merchant. Instead, they charged towards Lan Ling. The 3 burly men were 7th-layer Divine King Realm cultivators. Their divine force was as strong as a mountain as they charged towards Lan Ling. Facing such experts, Lan Ling did not have the slightest strength to resist. Lan Ling was about to fall into the hands of the 3 burly men. "You're courting death." Lan Shang was infuriated. His soul power surged and turned into a terrifying sword light, bursting forth. One of the sword lights blocked the crimson-robed man's attack while the others charged towards the 3 burly men. Blood splattered and the 3 burly men were slashed apart. Chapter 3198. Blood splashed everywhere. The 3 middle-aged men at the 7th King God realm were cut into halves by Lan Shang's soul sword. They died on the spot. "Let's go!" After killing the 3 middle-aged men, Blue Merchant took Lan Ling and soared into the sky. They wanted to leave this place. "Don't let them escape!" Wu Fan shouted. The bloody man soared into the sky and slashed out many blood-red saber lights. There were 7 saber lights in total. They attacked Blue Merchant from different directions. Even Lan Ling was surrounded by them. If Blue Merchant continued to run, Lan Ling would be hit by the blood-red saber lights. Lan Shang's figure suddenly stopped, and the killing intent on his body surged. His eyes shone like 2 stars. That was the result of his extremely condensed soul strength. His forehead glowed, and his surging soul strength condensed into a huge palm that slammed out behind him. Boom, boom, boom. The 7 blood-red saber lights couldn't withstand a single blow from the palm formed by Wu Fan's soul strength. They collapsed instantly. The palm didn't stop. It continued to hit the man in the blood-red robe. The man in the blood-red robe screamed in agony as he was blown away. He retreated for tens of thousands of meters before falling to the ground. Many people scanned the area with their spiritual consciousness. They realized that the man in the blood-red robe was no longer breathing. His soul strength had been destroyed. Many people gasped in shock. The man in the blood-red robe was an expert of the 9th King God realm. He was killed just like that? Didn't Blue Merchant have his stellar core destroyed? How could he still be so strong? Normally, once a person's stellar core was destroyed, his divine power would be depleted. Even if he still had a little soul strength, he wouldn't be able to do anything. However, Blue Merchant could kill a 9th King God realm expert with 1 blow. It went against common sense. After killing the man in the blood-red robe, Blue Merchant took Lan Ling and continued to fly. They wanted to leave this place. "Stay!" A cold voice resounded. There was an old man behind Wu Fan. He hadn't taken any action before. However, at that moment, he made his move. He opened his mouth and roared. His divine power boiled, and like a long river, it soared into the sky and swept Lan Shang into it. Blue Merchant unleashed a palm strike with all his might, colliding with the river of divine power. Rumble! It was as if an earthquake had taken place, causing the void to tremble violently. Blue Merchant's body shook violently as he brought Lan Ling back tens of thousands of meters. The old man stepped forward. No one saw how he moved, but in the next moment he appeared 100 meters away from Blue Merchant. His speed was unbelievable. "Divine Lord," Blue Merchant said with a solemn expression. The others were shocked as well. This old man was a Divine Lord realm powerhouse. Wu Fan was indeed the only son of the imperial tutor. He had a divine lord by his side at all times. "Blue Merchant, you dared to kill an expert from the imperial tutor's residence. No one can save you. Quan Lu, break Blue Merchant's limbs and seal his soul. Bring Lan Ling back to the imperial tutor's residence. Today, I want to make her my woman. Let's see who can stop me." Wu Fan said domineeringly. Blue Merchant had dared to kill an expert from the imperial tutor's residence. In Wu Fan's heart, he had already sentenced Blue Merchant to death. Boom! The old man was called Quan Lu. A terrifying aura emanated from his body. The vast aura turned into a terrifying pressure that pressed down on Blue Merchant. Ling, back off. Blue Merchant's glabella shone brightly. His soul power covered his body to resist the pressure. At the same time, he ordered Lan Ling, "Father." Lan Ling was worried. The old man was a Divine Lord realm expert. Could Blue Merchant fight him? Back off. Blue Merchant repeated with a heavier tone. Lan Ling could only back off obediently. Let us go. Blue Merchant looked at Quan Lu. You still want to leave? Dream on. Today, don't even think about leaving. Wu Fan's voice was extremely cold. You better not force me. Otherwise, I'll destroy you all. Blue Merchant's eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. Blue Merchant, don't try to intimidate others. Your star core has been destroyed. I don't believe you can still be a match for a Divine Lord. Lan Feng shouted. Quan Lu. Wu Fan ordered. Boom. Quan Lu attacked. His body burned like a star. His divine power surged and condensed into a giant python that pounced on Blue Merchant. The giant python streaked across the void. The space shook violently. The vast pressure caused the surrounding people to retreat in fear. Blue Merchant's eyes were solemn. His soul power condensed into a giant hand that grabbed forward. However, the giant python swung its tail and hit the giant hand. The giant hand shook violently and shattered. Blue Merchant's body retreated. A cripple wants to fight against a Divine Lord. You're courting death. Wu Fan sneered. After forcing Lan Shang to retreat, Quan Fei's God Force continued to surge out, and the giant python once again attacked Lan Shang. Blue Merchant tried his best to resist. However, he was no match for Quan Lu. He was suppressed and was in a precarious situation. Blue Merchant is nothing to be afraid of. Brother Wu, I'll take Lan Ling down. Tonight, you can train her well. Lan Feng laughed proudly. His body flashed and he charged towards Lan Ling. You, get lost. Lan Ling saw Lan Feng approaching. She shouted angrily and slashed at Lan Feng with her sword. Lan Feng smashed Lan Ling's sword light with his palm, causing Lan Ling to retreat continuously. You think you can stop me? Surrender. Lan Feng placed one hand behind his back and strode towards Lan Ling. Lan Ling gritted her teeth and activated her divine power. A beam of divine light flew out from her divine power and merged with her combat sword. Swoosh! Lan Ling slashed at Lan Feng again. Sword Chi whistled. The power of this attack was several times stronger than before. Secret technique of origin? Lan Feng roared in disbelief. A combat sword appeared in his hand. He unleashed his divine power and slashed. Clang! Their sword light collided. Lan Feng's cultivation and awakened divine power of origin were higher. Even though Lan Ling had awakened her secret technique of origin, she was still no match for Lan Feng. Her sword light dissipated and she retreated again. Blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. You actually awakened your secret technique of origin. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Lan Feng roared in his heart. He was extremely jealous. He had wholeheartedly wanted to awaken his secret technique of origin, but he couldn't. Back then, he wanted to seize Lu Ming's divine power source bead to awaken his secret technique of origin, but he couldn't do so in the end. Now, Lan Ling had awakened her secret technique of origin. He was envious, jealous, and hateful. Interesting. The more talented a woman is, the more exciting it is to play with her. Wu Fan saw that Lan Ling had awakened her secret technique of origin. His eyes shone brightly and he became more and more interested. So what if you've awakened your secret technique of origin? Do you think you can stop me? Surrender now. Lan Feng roared and unleashed his full strength. Lan Feng's strength was indeed shocking. Lan Ling couldn't block his attack at all. Her body flew out and she vomited blood. She was severely injured. Then, Lan Feng condensed a large hand and grabbed Lan Ling. He wanted to capture Lan Ling in his hand. I'm going to fight it out with you. Blue Merchant saw this scene and his eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. He roared in anger. His glabella shone brightly. Then, a small person rushed out from his glabella. Chapter 3199. Blue Merchant's glabella shone brightly and a small person walked out from his glabella. This small person looked exactly like Blue Merchant. The small person emitted light and a vast soul power spread out in all directions. You're crazy. The Divine Lord Realm Old Man was shocked. Kill! Lan Shang let out a long howl. That tiny person actually transformed into a sword of light. Swoosh! The light sword cut through the void like a ray of immortal light and charged towards the Divine Lord Realm Old Man. The Divine Lord Realm Old Man shouted and set up 18 layers of defense in front of him. However, when the light sword slashed through, the 18 layers of defense were instantly pierced. The light sword did not stop and flew through the Divine Lord Realm Old Man's glabella. The Divine Lord Realm Old Man's body stiffened. His eyes widened, filled with shock and disbelief. Then, his body fell straight to the ground. There was no longer any aura on his body. A Divine Lord Realm powerhouse was killed just like this. There weren't any wounds on the surface of his body, but his soul had already been thoroughly annihilated. No, impossible. Wu roared. Wu Fan let out a low growl in disbelief. That was a Divine Lord. Although he was only a first-level Divine Lord, Blue Merchant's star core was already destroyed. How could he kill a Divine Lord Realm expert? Swoosh! At this moment, a sword light flew out from the Divine Lord Realm Old Man's glabella. It was the sword light condensed by Blue Merchant's soul. However, this sword light was many times dimmer than before. If it was a star before, it was now a candle flame. It flew back to Blue Merchant's glabella. Blue Merchant's body trembled and he spat out a large mouthful of blood. Although he had killed the Divine Lord Realm Old Man, he had also suffered heavy injuries. That move just now was executed by Blue Merchant by burning his soul power. Although he had killed his opponent, his soul power had been exhausted at an alarming rate. Even his lifespan had been greatly reduced. Let go of Ling. After Blue Merchant killed the Divine Monarch Old Man, he charged towards Blue Maple and sent a palm strike towards Blue Maple. At this moment, Blue Merchant's killing intent was cold. He was completely enraged and wanted to kill Blue Maple. Since he had already killed a few people, he didn't mind killing Blue Maple. Blue Maple was already in a daze. He was so frightened that he even forgot to dodge. By the time he reacted, it was already too late. Save me, save me. Blue Maple screamed hysterically. Just as Blue Merchant's palm was about to hit Blue Maple, a terrifying force suddenly came from afar. A saber light slashed toward them at a shocking speed. Boom! The blade light chopped down on Blue Merchant's big hand. The Blue Merchant spat out a mouthful of blood, and his figure retreated rapidly. Rumble! A terrifying tremor came from that direction. It was as if a magnificent army was charging over. The terrifying pressure made it difficult for everyone to breathe. Then, everyone saw a group of soldiers in armor walking over in the air. There were only a dozen soldiers in this group. However, the aura that they exuded was extremely terrifying. Especially the few people walking at the front. Their auras were even more terrifying than the Divine Monarch Old Man. Divine Monarchs? Without a doubt, the few people walking at the front were all Divine Monarchs. They were even stronger than the first-level Divine Monarch Old Man. It's the Imperial Guards. Someone said in a hoarse voice. The Taishu dynasty had a vast territory. However, there were also many enemies. Hence, they had never stopped preparing their weapons. The number of soldiers was uncountable. They had many terrifying soldiers guarding all directions. However, among all the soldiers, the Imperial Guards were undoubtedly the strongest. They were in charge of guarding the Taishu holy capital. Those who could join the Imperial Guards were the strongest of the strongest. They had unlimited potential. Many famous people in the Taishu dynasty had come from the Imperial Guards. The speed of the Imperial Guards was very fast. In an instant, they were close to Lan Shang. A strong pressure pressed down on Lan Shang, causing him to retreat continuously. Captain Wu, it's you. That's great. When Wu Fan saw the Imperial Guards, he was elated. Master Wu Fan, what's going on? The leader of the Imperial Guards asked. Seeing this scene, Blue Merchant's heart sank. Captain Wu, This blue merchant is lawless and his methods are vicious. He continuously killed people from the preceptor's mansion. He even killed a divine monarch. We must take him down and punish him severely." Wu Fan roared. "What? He killed a divine monarch?" The Imperial Guards were shocked. They looked at Blue Merchant. They naturally knew Blue Merchant. However, wasn't Blue Merchant's star core destroyed? How could he kill a divine monarch? Captain Wu's eyes shined. He looked at Lan Shang and said, "So it was soul force. Lan Shang, your talent is truly admirable. But today you have killed people in the holy capital, and even killed a divine Lord Realm powerhouse. This is a violation of the law. You must come with us." Lan Shang sighed. He knew that he wouldn't be able to leave today. He had killed a divine Lord powerhouse and had already exhausted all of his soul force. In fact, he had consumed a great deal of his soul force and was no longer able to fight. Moreover, the strongest people in the Imperial Guards were even stronger than the old man. Even if he didn't exhaust his soul power, he was no match for them. "I can go with you. However, this has nothing to do with my daughter. I hope you can let her go." Blue Merchant looked at Lan Ling and said, "No, father. You can't go with them." Lan Ling shouted. The prison of the Imperial Guards was one of the most terrifying places in the Taishu dynasty. Not many people could come out after entering. "Ling, leave quickly." Blue Merchant shouted. "Leave. Today, none of you can leave." Wu Fan's cold voice sounded. "Captain Wu, take down Blue Merchant. I will deal with his daughter." After saying that, Wu Fan walked towards Lan Ling. "You dare." Blue Merchant was furious. He circulated his remaining soul power and was about to attack Wu Fan. However, Captain Wu waved his hand and a chain flew out, binding Blue Merchant. No matter how Blue Merchant struggled, it was useless. The difference in strength was too great. Captain Wu also sighed in his heart. As an Imperial Guard, he had his duty. Blue Merchant had killed people in the Saint Capital. Moreover, he had killed a monarch god. He had to take down Blue Merchant and bring him to the Imperial Guard's prison for investigation. Moreover, the Imperial Tutor had great power and influence over the Imperial Guards. If he disobeyed Wu Fan's orders, he wouldn't have an easy time in the future. "Haha, Blue Merchant, you still want to fight with me? Dream on. I will take good care of your daughter." Wu Fan sneered and walked towards Lan Ling. He waved his hand and tried to grab Lan Ling. Wu Fan was one of the Saint Capital's 10 heroes. He was stronger than Lan Feng. Lan Ling couldn't resist at all. After a few moves, she was enveloped by Wu Fan's hand. Lan Ling was about to fall into Wu Fan's hands. Chapter 3200. Wu Fan used his god power to form a giant hand and surrounded Lan Ling. It looked like it was about to grab Lan Ling. Blue Merchant's eyes were filled with despair. Back in the day, he was unparalleled and his name shook the holy capital. Even Wu Fan's father, the current Imperial Tutor, had to greet him with a smile. But now, even a few juniors could bully him. What was even more tragic was that he couldn't even protect his own daughter. A tiger would be bullied by a dog. At this moment, a gust of wind blew over. This gust of wind was extremely strange. It was like a spring breeze and had no power. However, when it blew against the giant hand that Wu Fan had formed, his hand immediately dissipated. On the other hand, Lan Ling was pulled back by a force. She kept moving away from Wu Fan, Blue Maple and the rest. "Who is it?" Wu Fan shouted angrily. His eyes were like lightning as he scanned the surroundings. "Young man, don't go too far. Where it's possible to let people off, let them off." An old voice rang out. Following which, an old man walked out from the crowd. This old man looked very old. His beard and hair were snowy white. His face was full of wrinkles and his eyes were cloudy. He slowly walked out. He looked like he was walking slowly, but his speed was shocking. Before anyone could react, he had already arrived beside Lan Ling. "Old man, was it you who attacked just now? How dare you meddle in my affairs? I think you must be tired of living at your age." Wu Fan shouted. "Young man, you have a big temper. Let me calm you down." the old man said plainly. Then he slapped across the air. No one saw how the old man attacked. They only saw the old man wave his hand. Then, a crisp slap resounded through the crowd. Wu Fan screamed in pain as his body flew out. He spun a few hundred rounds in the air before coming to a stop. Everyone realized that half of his face was swollen like a pig's head. His teeth were flying everywhere. It was a horrible sight. Old man, how dare you hit me? Captain Wu, attack and cripple this old man. I want to feed him to the dogs. Wu Fan screamed hysterically. However, he didn't notice that Captain Wu's face was very serious, and even had a trace of shock. Captain Wu took a few steps forward, then bowed and cupped his fists towards the old man. Senior, are you the 1000-saint old heavenly king? As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. Everyone who had heard of this name widened their eyes and stared blankly at the old man. In the entire Taishu dynasty, there was only one person who could be called this, and that was the previous heavenly king of the 1000 Saints' heavenly king residence, one of the 27 heavenly kings' residences. Among the 27 heavenly kings' palaces, there were some who were strong and some who were weak. The difference in strength between the strong and the weak was huge. As for the 1000 Saints' heavenly king residence, it was ranked in the top 3 among the 27 heavenly king residences. Holy 1000 Old Heavenly King was the grandfather of the current Holy 1000 Heavenly King. He was a legendary figure who had lived for countless years. No one could tell how old he was. However, there was one thing that was universally acknowledged, and that was the strength of the 1000 Holy Old Heavenly King. He was one of the top existences in the Taishu dynasty, and was one of the few people who stood at the peak. Some people said that if the 1000 Holy Old Heavenly King residence was still in charge of the 1000 Saints' Heavenly King residence, then the 1000 Saints' Heavenly King residence would not be in the top 3, but first. However, the 1000 Holy Old Heavenly King had not appeared for countless years, and many people thought that he had fallen. Could he have appeared again? Blue Maple's and Wu Fan's eyes widened as they revealed astonished looks. Oh, I didn't expect that after not appearing for so many years, there would still be people who remember an old man like me. The old man smiled slightly, which meant that he agreed with Captain Wu's words. I was fortunate enough to meet the old heavenly king once in the past, and I have never dared to forget it. I didn't expect to see the old heavenly king again today. It is truly a blessing of 3 lifetimes. Captain Wu said respectfully. The old heavenly king smiled and looked at Blue Merchant. I didn't expect that the hero of the generation back then would end up like this. How sad. The 1000 Holy Old Heavenly King sighed. Old Heavenly King, long time no see. How have you been? It's a pity that I can't salute you now. Blue Merchant said. Everyone's eyes flashed. Obviously, Blue Merchant and the 1000 Holy Old Heavenly King knew each other. No need to be so polite. The 1000 Holy Old Heavenly King waved his hand casually and sighed. Back then, one was you and the other was Jianghu. You were the 2 people I thought the most highly of. But now, one has fallen and the other has been crippled. How sad. Everyone was shocked and didn't dare to interrupt. Jianghu was a taboo in the Taishu dynasty, especially in the Taishu sacred capital. No one dared to mention him. Only people like the 1000 Holy Old Heavenly King dared to say that. Blue Merchant lowered his head and didn't say anything. The few of you, Lan Shang has met me once before. Can you let him go? The 1000 Holy Old Heavenly King looked at Captain Wu. Captain Wu hesitated. No. At this moment, Wu Fan shouted again. He cupped his fists at the 1000 Holy Old Heavenly King and said, Old Heavenly King, I respect you because you are my senior. I didn't dare to say anything when you reprimanded me, but Wu Fan pointed at Blue Merchant and said, Blue Merchant killed a few experts from the Imperial Preceptor's residence in the Saint Capital, including a Divine Lord. He has already violated the rules. This rule was set by the previous Saint Emperors. In the Saint Capital, unless it is under certain circumstances, no one is allowed to kill. Senior, although you have a high status, you can't violate the rules of the Saint Emperors, right? There was a rule in the Taishu sacred capital that no one was allowed to kill. However, it was okay to fight with each other. It was okay to injure or cripple the other party, but no one was allowed to kill. If one wanted to kill someone, they would have to do it under certain circumstances, such as entering the life and death arena. This rule was set by an ancient saint emperor many years ago, and it had been in use for so many years. 1,000 holy old heavenly king's eyes flashed. Wu Fan was shocked and retreated until he was behind Captain Wu. 1,000 holy old heavenly king was too famous. Even his father, the imperial preceptor, had to be polite to him. He was afraid that 1,000 holy old heavenly king would kill him in a fit of anger. The rules of the saint emperors were useful to ordinary people, but they were useless to people like 1,000 holy old heavenly king. Old heavenly king, I have a duty to fulfill. Please don't make things difficult for me. Captain Wu cupped his fists again. He had no intention of letting Blue Merchant go. Old heavenly king, you don't have to make things difficult for me. Let them take me away. I just want to ask old heavenly king to save my daughter. Don't let her fall into their hands. Blue Merchant said. He naturally knew that 1,000 holy old heavenly king was not afraid of the rules of the saint emperors. However, he still had a bunch of disciples and grand disciples. If 1,000 holy old heavenly king forced his way in, he would implicate the 1,000 holy heavenly king residents. AI, don't worry. Your daughter will be fine. 1,000 holy old heavenly king sighed. Indeed, he had to worry about the safety of the 1,000 holy heavenly king residents. Chapter 3201. No, I have to take Lan Ling away too. Wu Fan shouted. What law did that girl break? You want to take her away? Holy old heavenly king asked. She's my fiancée. Of course I have to take her away. Wu Fan bit the bullet and said, Bullshit, since when did Ling become your fiancée? The matter between you and the Lan family has nothing to do with me and Ling. I've had nothing to do with the Lan family for a long time. Blue Merchant shouted. Oh, so you're forcing a deal? How dare you? Holy old heavenly king's eyes flashed and a terrifying aura spread out. Even though he was hiding behind Captain Wu, Wu Fan sat down in midair and almost peed his pants when he was suppressed by the aura. He had a feeling that holy old heavenly king could kill him with just one look. Captain Wu's body trembled and he took a few steps back. His eyes were filled with horror. It was just an aura, but it made him feel like he could not bear it. He knew that the gap between him and holy old heavenly king was too big. Also, what do you plan to do with Blue Merchant after taking him away? Holy old heavenly king looked at Captain Wu. Captain Wu swallowed his saliva and said respectfully, I'll handle it impartially. I'll report it to the holy emperor and await his punishment. You'd better do that. I don't want anyone to interfere with the imperial guards. Otherwise, I'll go to the holy emperor and ask him. Holy old heavenly king glanced at Wu Fan. His meaning was obvious. He hoped that the imperial guards would handle the matter impartially and did not want the imperial tutor's residence to interfere with Blue Merchant. Don't worry, holy old heavenly king. This will not happen, Captain Wu said hurriedly. His back was drenched in cold sweat. He knew that if he did not handle this matter well, his future would be bleak. Wu Fan's face turned ugly. He had planned to use some underhanded means to kill Blue Merchant. However, it seemed that Captain Wu would not let him do so. Senior, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. Captain Wu cupped his fists and gave his subordinates a look. Then he led Blue Merchant away. Wu Fan glared fiercely at Lan Ling before he left with Blue Maple. Senior, please save my father. Lan Ling begged the old heavenly king with tears in her eyes. Don't worry. The Holy Academy of the Great Void Imperial Family is about to open. In the 100 years before and after the opening of the Holy Academy of the Great Void Imperial Family, the Imperial Guards in the Holy Emperor Palace generally won't touch prisoners. I'll think of a way after a while. Let's go. After the old heavenly king finished speaking, he waved his hand and brought Lan Ling back to the place where the Blue Merchant and the others originally lived. Lu Ming naturally had no idea what was happening outside. He wholeheartedly cultivated under the sacred heaven jade annulus, comprehending all kinds of divine powers. Time passed. and in the blink of an eye, he had cultivated for 35 days under the sagely heaven jade wall. His time was up. Lu Ming opened his eyes and ended his cultivation. There was a hint of joy in his eyes. After 35 days of cultivation, he had gained a lot. Originally, he had a total of 3 kinds of divine powers. After awakening the origin divine power factor, he still had 5 kinds of divine powers that were 99% awakened. However, after 35 days of cultivation, the other 5 kinds of divine powers had all broken through and awakened the origin divine power factor. In this way, his 8 kinds of divine powers had all awakened the origin divine power factor, causing his strength to soar. This sacred heaven jade wall is really amazing. It can steal the fortune of heaven and earth. Wouldn't the geniuses of the Bone Sword tribe be super terrifying? Lu Ming thought to himself. If they cultivated under the sacred heaven jade wall every day, wouldn't the people of the Bone Sword tribe be super powerful? However, on second thought, that might not be the case. This was because the sacred heaven jade wall required a large amount of energy to maintain this effect. Also, not everyone would have the same effect as Lu Ming when cultivating under the sacred heaven jade wall. The more talented one was, the better the effect. If one's talent was poor, the effect would naturally be poor. Also, Lu Ming speculated that if the origin divine power factor was awakened too many times, for example, after awakening it twice, the effect would be greatly reduced. Lu Ming had personally verified this point. After awakening all 5 types of divine grade God force, Huang Xiaolong still had 2 days left. In these 2 days, he spent his time comprehending the sovereign's God force. He hoped that he could take another step forward and awaken his origin God force twice. However, the improvement of the sovereign divine power was not particularly shocking. The reason why the other 5 kinds of divine powers improved so much was that they had not been awakened before. Once they were awakened, the effect of comprehending them would be greatly reduced. Otherwise, the sacred heaven jade wall would be too heaven-defying. No matter how strong the Bone Sword tribe was, they would not be able to keep it. Mid-Autumn Moon had 1 more day than Lu Ming. Lu Ming waited quietly. A day passed quickly and Mid-Autumn Moon also finished cultivating. After Mid-Autumn Moon finished cultivating, the two did not stay and left the Bone Sword tribe. On the way, Mid-Autumn Moon, how's your cultivation? Lu Ming asked. My other divine powers have awakened the origin divine power factor. Young master, how about you? Mid-Autumn Moon blinked and asked. All awakened? Good. Lu Ming was overjoyed. Mid-Autumn Moon's divine powers were almost the same as his. This meant that Mid-Autumn Moon's other divine powers had also awakened the origin divine power factor. Same for me. Lu Ming smiled. The two chatted as they walked towards their residence. When they returned to their residence, they saw Lan Ling in a daze. Miss Lan, where's Lan's shoe? Lu Ming asked. Father, he. After being asked by Lu Ming, Lan Ling's big eyes were filled with mist and tears almost fell out. What's wrong with Lan's shoe? Lu Ming's heart trembled. He had a bad feeling. Father, he was taken away by the Imperial Guards. Lan Ling said. As she spoke, tears rolled down her cheeks. At this moment, Lan Ling was no longer the arrogant Lan Ling, but a helpless and weak girl. Taken away by the Imperial Guards? What happened? Lu Ming hurriedly asked. Immediately, Lan Ling told him what happened that day. Blue Maple Wu Fan, damn it. Lu Ming growled, emitting a cold murderous intent. All these years, although he called Blue Merchant Lan Shu, in his heart, he had already regarded him as his teacher. Now, Blue Merchant had encountered such injustice. He was furious and wanted to kill his way to the Imperial Guards and save Blue Merchant. Lu Ming took a few deep breaths to calm himself down. With his current cultivation, if he killed his way to the Imperial Guards, any Imperial Guard would be able to kill him with a slap. Where's the holy old heavenly king? Where is he? I'll pay him a visit. Lu Ming continued to ask. Little guy, are you looking for me? A voice suddenly sounded behind Lu Ming. It was very close. Lu Ming was shocked. There was someone behind him, but he didn't feel it at all. He hurriedly turned around and saw an old man smiling at him. Chapter 3202. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He immediately understood that this was the old Heavenly King. "Greetings, Senior Heavenly King." Lu Ming cupped his fists and bowed. Qiu Moon also bowed together with Lu Ming. "No need to be so polite." The old Heavenly King waved his hand, and a gentle force lifted Lu Ming. Then, the old Heavenly King stared at Lu Ming with bright eyes and nodded. "Not bad, not bad, not bad at all." Lu Ming was a little confused for a moment. "Senior, may I know how to save Lan Shu? If there's anything you need, I'll do my best." Lu Ming asked. "There is a way to save Blue Merchant." The old Heavenly King said. "There is a way? What is it?" Lu Ming, Lan Ling, and Qiu Moon's eyes lit up. "Only you three can do it," the old Heavenly King said. Lu Ming and the other two were puzzled. The three of them were just juniors. Their cultivation base was not high. Compared to the colossus of the Taishu dynasty, they were not worth mentioning. How could they save Blue Merchant? The opportunity to save Blue Merchant is when the Taishu Imperial Sacred Courtyard is held. The old Heavenly King continued to explain, every time the Taishu Imperial Sacred Courtyard is held, those who enter the top 10 will be qualified to establish their own family. However, those who enter the top 3 will not only be qualified to establish their own family, but also can make a request to the Heavenly King. As long as the request is not too harsh, the Heavenly King will usually agree to it. So, as long as one of you enters the top 3 when the Taishu Imperial Sacred Courtyard is held, you can propose to the Heavenly King to release Blue Merchant. This condition is not too harsh. I believe the Heavenly King will agree to it. Enter the top 3. Lu Ming and the other two's eyes lit up, but then dimmed. During this period, they had already seen some terrifying geniuses. There were too many experts. Not to mention the top 3, even if it was the top 10, Lu Ming would feel a lot of pressure. He was not confident. The top 3 were many times more difficult. Lan Ling, in particular, clenched her fists and trembled. She knew very well that even if she had awakened her origin source secret technique, with her strength, she had no hope of entering the top 10, let alone the top 3. She felt hopeless. To be honest, with your current strength, not to mention the top 3, you might not even be able to enter the top 10. The old Heavenly King attacked mercilessly. Top 3, what should we do? There's only a few decades left. Unless I can break through to the Divine King realm in a few decades, I'll have a chance. But how can I do that in a few decades? Lu Ming's mind raced. If he were to cultivate step by step, he would definitely not be able to break through. What should he do? For a moment, Lu Ming had no idea what to do. This old man can give you a chance. At this moment, the old Heavenly King spoke again. What opportunity? Lu Ming and the other two showed a glimmer of hope. A jade bottle appeared in the old Heavenly King's hand and said, "Inside this jade bottle, there's a large formation that this old man has set up. It's very beneficial for the cultivation of the Divine King realm. Go in and cultivate. As for how much you can gain, it depends on your own fortune." Lu Ming and the other two naturally agreed without hesitation. The old Heavenly King's cultivation was unfathomable. The formation that he set up must be extraordinary. However, this old man reminds you that you will have to face extreme pain when you enter the jade bottle. You must be mentally prepared. The old Heavenly King said, "It's okay, a little pain is nothing." Lan Ling clenched her fists. Lu Ming and Qiu Yu had determined looks in their eyes. If you want to gain, you naturally have to pay a price. A little pain was nothing. "Senior, let the two of them go in first. I still have something to do, I'll go in later." At this moment, Lu Ming spoke. According to the old Heavenly King's words, his cultivation might break through if he entered the jade bottle to cultivate. If Lu Ming continued to break through, he would reach the Divine King realm. However, Lu Ming still had 2 types of divine force in his Dantian, the Golden Dragon Divine Force and the Multi-Eyed Divine Force. These 2 types of divine force were not divine-grade divine force. Lu Ming wanted to break through to the Divine King realm with all of his divine-grade divine force. Otherwise, it would be best to disperse these 2 types of divine force. Once they formed a star nucleus, it would be difficult to change them after breaking through to the Divine King realm. For example, Autumn Moon used to have two types of divine force that were not divine-grade divine force. Before she broke through to the Divine King realm, she had dispersed them. In any case, after breaking through, he could cultivate other divine-grade divine powers. However, if he broke through with a divine-grade divine power before breaking through to the God King realm, it would be very difficult for him to find a divine-grade divine power with similar attributes to his own. Lu Ming had two paths in front of him. One was to disperse the multi-eyed divine force and the golden dragon divine force. The other was to find a divine-grade divine force that corresponded to the two types of divine force. After cultivating for so long, it would be a pity to disperse them. Lu Ming planned to find a divine-grade divine force with similar attributes to the two types of divine force. Lu Ming did not find any in the Nianju Heavenly King residence. However, this was the Great Void Holy Capital. There should be a divine-grade divine force with similar attributes. Alright, the two of them can go in first. The old Heavenly King nodded his head in satisfaction. He then pulled out the cap of the jade bottle. From the opening of the jade bottle, a faint divine light spread out. At the same time, a suction force enveloped Autumn Moon and Lan Ling. Autumn Moon and Lan Ling's bodies involuntarily flew towards the opening of the jade bottle. Their bodies became smaller and smaller until they disappeared into the opening of the jade bottle. How much you can gain will depend on yourselves. This is all I can do to help. The old Heavenly King said softly as he closed the jade bottle. Senior, I'll be heading out for a while. I'll be back soon. Lu Ming cupped his fists at the old Heavenly King. He then left his residence and headed towards the largest market in the Great Void Holy Capital. Since the Great Void Holy Capital was so prosperous, the market was also bustling. There were all sorts of treasures available. Lu Ming specifically looked for shops that sold all sorts of divine skills, secret techniques, and divine skills. After inquiring about a few clans, Lu Ming finally found two kinds of mystical techniques. One of them was called the Divine Eye Heaven Incantation, which was a divine-grade divine power similar to the multi-eyed divine power. The second one was called the Primordial Dragon Mantra. The Primordial Dragon Force that was cultivated was also of the divine grade, similar to the Golden Dragon Force. After finding the two types of divine skills, Lu Ming was overjoyed. After flipping through them, Lu Ming memorized the two types of divine skills and returned to his residence. Senior, I'm ready, Lu Ming said. Alright, go in. The old Heavenly King took out the jade bottle and pointed it at Lu Ming. Lu Ming felt a suction force acting on him as his body flew towards the opening of the jade bottle. After Lu Ming entered the jade bottle, he felt a strong force pulling him downwards. Soon he landed at the bottom. He looked around and did not see Autumn Moon and Lan Ling. Presumably, they were scattered and not in the same place. Chapter 3203. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew and divine light filled the air, sweeping toward Lu Ming. Divine lights from all directions shrouded Lu Ming in an instant, forming a terrifying wind pressure. Bam! Lu Ming almost fell to his knees from the wind pressure. Pain. Instantly, Lu Ming felt a tearing pain all over his body. His skin, muscles, and bones felt like they were about to be torn apart by the wind. Endless pain drowned him. Block it, block it. Lu Ming roared and circulated his divine power with all his might. The 10 divine power vortexes in his body spun rapidly. 10 types of divine power gushed out and covered his body, resisting the wind pressure from the outside world. However, the divine power vibrated and was constantly being worn down. Lu Ming then used the 9 layers of crimson gold armor and ice chains, but they were all useless. They were completely worn down. The wind pressure continued to act on him. Endless pain came. Lu Ming growled. He could only stabilize his mind and resist the endless pain. But in the next moment, Lu Ming made a discovery. As he resisted, there was a strange energy in the surroundings that seeped into his body and merged with his divine power. It made his divine body and divine power slowly strengthen. The wind pressure formed by the divine light could even seep into the depths of his divine power and temper his cyclone. As a result, the divine power in the cyclone continued to condense, becoming more and more solid. The cyclone was slowly approaching the star core. Although this kind of improvement was not very fast, it was many times faster than cultivating step by step outside. Moreover, it was improving all the time. This kind of improvement could be seen and felt. Over time, the rate of improvement would be astonishing. Just like that, Lu Ming endured it and tempered himself in this kind of pain. The jade bottle was a furnace, and Lu Ming was like a weapon being tempered. Not only him, but Lan Ling was also going through the same thing in the autumn moon. Day after day, time flew by quickly. Later, Lu Ming found that not only could his divine body and divine power be tempered, but even his soul was being tempered. Although the improvement was far less than the divine body and divine power. However, every bit of improvement in the soul was rare and precious. First, I'll cultivate the divine eye heaven art and the Archean dragon mantra. Lu Ming's heart moved. He used these two divine techniques to cultivate these two divine powers with the help of the external tempering. Lu Ming only needed to cultivate the first level. Lu Ming was very familiar with the cultivation of divine techniques. Not long after, he cultivated the divine power of two types of divine-grade divine techniques. After a while, Lu Ming ignited the divine fire and integrated the multi-eyed divine power and the golden dragon divine power into the divine fire. After the fusion, the two divine powers began to strengthen these two divine powers. In such an environment, these two divine powers improved very quickly. After a few years, these two divine powers grew to the half-step God-King realm. They were the same as other divine powers, but they did not awaken their divine power origin factor. When these two divine powers reached the half-step God-King realm, the next step was to break through to the God-King realm. Just like that, day after day, year after year passed. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had cultivated here for 30 years. Over the past 30 years, Lu Ming cultivated day and night, enduring the pain all the time. His body, including his soul, seemed to have been reforged and looked brand new. 30 years of perseverance, day after day, was exchanged for great gains. In his dantian, the 10 divine power vortexes were condensed to the extreme. They emitted a sparkling light like 10 suns. Boom! Suddenly, the 10 divine power vortexes let out a rumbling sound, and then a powerful energy burst out, forming circular shockwaves that rushed out in all directions. Lu Ming's body surged with a powerful aura. This was the aura of a god-king. He broke through. After 30 years of arduous cultivation, the 10 types of divine powers in Lu Ming's dantian had finally transformed from divine power vortexes into star cores. The 10 star cores floated in his dantian, shining brightly. At the same time, from all directions, waves of powerful energy converged towards Lu Ming. In this jade bottle, other than the array, there was an endless stream of energy. These energies poured into Lu Ming's body and were refined, turning into divine power. In his dantian, the 10 star cores became more solid. Lu Ming's realm also slowly stabilized. Lu Ming did not stop. He continued to cultivate. Time passed year after year. After an unknown amount of time, a suction force suddenly acted on Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming involuntarily flew upwards. In the next moment, the surroundings changed. Lu Ming looked around and found that he had returned to the courtyard where Blue Merchant had lived. Beside him, Autumn Moon and Lan Ling were also there. The two of them were also looking around. All right, there are still 3 months before the Great Void Imperial Academy opens. You should familiarize yourselves with your current realms. An old voice sounded. It was old Heavenly King Qian Sheng. Thank you, Holy Thousand King. Lu Ming cupped his fists in gratitude. This time he had gained a lot. The 10 divine grade divine powers in his body had all transformed into star cores. He had entered the God King realm. Moreover, his cultivation had reached the peak of the first heaven of the God King realm. Compared to before his breakthrough, his divine power was much stronger. His strength had skyrocketed. You're welcome. Familiarize yourselves with your new realms. Holy Thousand King waved his hand and kept the jade bottle. In the next moment he disappeared. He was really elusive. How's your progress? Lu Ming looked at Autumn Moon and Lan Ling. Young master, I've broken through. Autumn Moon's crisp voice sounded. Then, a powerful aura spread out from her body. Third heaven of the God King realm. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. Autumn Moon's progress was amazing. Before entering the jade bottle, Autumn Moon's cultivation base had just reached the second heaven of the God King realm. Now, she had reached the third heaven of the God King realm. She was not far from the fourth heaven of the God King realm. One should know that Autumn Moon had mastered 8 divine-grade divine powers. It would be difficult for her to improve. This was definitely a big gain. In addition, Autumn Moon had mastered the God-killing light and the God's blade. This time, when the Great Void Imperial Academy opened, she would definitely give everyone a big surprise. Boom. On the other side, Lan Ling's body also emitted a powerful aura. Third heaven of the God King realm. Lan Ling had also broken through to the third heaven of the God King realm. She had been in the first heaven of the God King realm before, but now she had broken through twice. However, it was normal. Lan Ling had only cultivated one type of divine power. It was much easier for her to break through compared to Lu Ming and Autumn Moon. It was normal for her to break through to the third heaven of the God King realm. Lu Ming, let's exchange some pointers. This time I will defeat you. Lan Ling's eyes were bright as she looked at Lu Ming. Her cultivation base had reached the third heaven of the God King realm, and she had awakened the Origin secret technique. This had boosted Lan Ling's confidence. Alright, let's exchange some pointers. Lu Ming smiled. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.